Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the pre-show of the 7th Annual and 3rd Virtual Rhode Island Food System Summit, entitled Setting the Table for the 2030 Food Vision. I'm Catherine Flynn, and I'm the Executive Director of the University of Rhode Island Business Engagement Center, and I'll be your MC today. I'm coming to you from the University of Rhode Island's beautiful Kingston campus. We will officially be kicking off the event in just a few minutes, but I wanted to give you a quick preview of the day. First, you'll hear from URI's President, Mark Parlange, as well as our Senior Senator, Jack Reed, and Rhode Island's Commerce Secretary, Elizabeth Tanner, about the importance of building a strategy to support the state and regional goals as it relates to our food system. Then you'll hear from Julie Stamazik, Director of Food Strategy for the state of Rhode Island, who will discuss her plans to update the 2017 food strategy, which was entitled Relish Rhody, and her goals to work with Rhode Island and URI on Relish Rhody 2.0 going forward. Next, you'll hear from Sophie Egan. Sophie is an internationally known author and leader at the intersection of food, health, and climate. Then you'll hear from Perry Rasso, owner of Matunic Oyster Farm, and Marta Gomez-Chiari, professor in the URI Department of Fisheries, Animal, and Veterinary Sciences. They will talk about an exciting new collaboration. After that, you'll hear from a series of experts who will discuss topics relevant to our food strategy, including preserving and growing the state's agriculture and seafood industries, workforce development in the food sector, and a growing farm-to-school movement in Rhode Island. The topics discussed in these sessions will inform several breakout sessions that we will be co-hosting with these community leaders after this summit is over. Finally, you'll be hearing from Terry Gray from the Department of Environmental Management. He will conclude our discussion to kick off the planning process. With this event, we hope to start a dialogue about what's happening in Rhode Island and what we can do to build a bright food sector future for our state. As a reminder, the Food Summit will be recorded and posted to the Rhode Island Food Center website at the end of the event. Throughout the day, please feel free to ask questions of our speakers by accessing the Business Engagement Center YouTube and Twitter pages, and if time allows, we will be pulling questions from our audience to pose to our speakers. And don't forget to include the hashtag RIFoodSummit23 when you post about today's events on social media. Before we get started for the day, I'd like to take a little bit of time to showcase some of the amazing work URI is doing to address food waste. This URI Food Recovery Program video will play shortly.
Food Recovery for Rhode Island is a program from URI Cooperative Extension that brings people together to learn something new, engage in dialogue, and then take action to strengthen the local food system.
So the program covers a lot of topics. It starts off with something called the challenge, which is where we really identify kind of what I call the bummer news and all the things that are happening across the state in terms of food access and food waste accumulation in our landfills and environmental concerns. From there, it's the next 5 weeks of talking about amazing community-driven solutions that are already happening across our state, and then teaching our volunteers on things like food preservation. They can be trained on things like how to compost, and also extensive training on volunteerism in terms of equity and inclusion.
Sankofa is a local food initiative in Providence, Rhode Island. It consists of a farmer's market, community kitchen, several community gardens, and a greenhouse. I think Sankofa is very unique because it gives your tenants and residents an opportunity to grow food. Food Recovery of Rhode Island and URI, me and my colleague Matt went through the program, and then we plan on taking that knowledge and teaching it to some of our growers and kitchen members so then they can take that information and train the next generation.
Harvest Cycle is the community composting program of Groundwork Rhode Island. So we're a bike-powered food scrap collection program. We pick up from residences and small businesses in Providence. We've done some presentations for the class, and then we've been a volunteer host site. So we've had volunteers come do a whole variety of things in groups and individually. Having volunteers who are familiar with like the mission and sort of the organization and the context is really helpful. And also just having consistent volunteers is really great, so then they can get really immersed in the project and be a little more independent and hopefully have a more fulfilling experience as well.
So what I learned personally is that the responsibility that I have regarding food waste, because having visited the Rhode Island Central Landfill as one of our field trips, I learned we have the responsibility to reduce it and understanding where our waste go. Being a refugee who experienced food insecurity myself, I wanted to explore ways that we can help address, food insecurity and then deal with food waste in order to divert that to feed the people who need it. I've learned how to preserve food through some of the courses that we did. Preserve canning, freezing, pickling, you name it. So there's lots of hands-on techniques and skills through preserving food that I really appreciate, that I take it home with me and learn it along with my children as well. So.
Our Food Recovery for Rhode Island participants are here in partnership with Hope's Harvest Rhode Island, gleaning food from Arcadian Fields, this amazing farm here in Hope Valley. So Hope's Harvest is one of our partner organizations where URI Food Recovery volunteers can donate their time and help feed our neighbors through this gleaning practice of harvesting food from farms and donating to local hunger relief agencies.
It's opened my eyes to really how to make a difference on a personal level and a local level, and I'm recognizing that you can be involved as little or as large as you want, and I just think that's so awesome.
It's been a great opportunity to learn what awesome people there are and what awesome work is being done. It's really cool to see what's already happening and how you can get really hands-on and involved.
The power of this program is that people take what they learn, they teach others, and they really live the change. They volunteer in their communities, they make changes at home. They're really making this happen at all levels.
For more information about the program, I hope you saw the link. Oh, there's the link listed below. Once again, we're very excited for today's Food System Summit, and we thank you for joining us for the pre-summit activities. We'll get started with the summit in just a minute at 9 o'clock sharp. Oh, it's already 9 o'clock, shortly. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 7th Annual and 3rd Virtual Rhode Island Food System Summit. It is fittingly entitled this year, Setting the Table for the 2030 Food Vision. We're excited to have over 300 people attending virtually today. I'm Catherine Flynn, and I'm the Executive Director of the University of Rhode Island Business Engagement Center, and I'll be your MC today. As you know, New England as a region has an ambitious goal of producing 50% of the food consumed in the region by the year 2060. This will not be achieved without innovative methods and partnerships to help grow our food system. Today's event represents our state's foremost annual convening of all the stakeholders in our food system. Today's audience is composed of 15% attendees representing federal and state government, 31% representing academia, and 71% the rest representing industry and nonprofits. Thank you to all of you who are joining us today. During the event, you'll hear from speakers from all across the country about a wide variety of topics, including new developments in shellfish aquaculture, cultivating food innovation, and entrepreneurship. Speakers will discuss successes and lessons learned. And we also will learn about how to apply this to our state's next food strategy. Just to give you a quick overview of the day, we will first hear from URI's President, Mark Parlange, as well as our Senior Senator, Jack Reed, and Rhode Island's Commerce Secretary, Liz Tanner, about the importance of building a strategy to support our state's regional and state goals in the food system. Then you'll hear from Julianne Stamazik, Director of the Food Strategy for Rhode Island, who will discuss her plans to update the 2017 food strategy entitled Relish Rhody, and her goals to work with Rhode Island and URI on Relish Rhody 2.0. Next, you'll hear from Sophie Egan, she'll be broadcasting actually to us from Colorado. She's an internationally known author and leader at the intersection of food, health, and climate. Then you'll hear from Perry Rasso, Matunic Oyster Farm owner, and Marta Gomez-Chieri, a professor in the URI Department of Fisheries, Animal and Veterinary Sciences, who will talk about an exciting new collaboration. After that, you'll hear from a series of experts who will discuss topics relevant to our state's food strategy, including preserving and growing the state's agriculture and seafood industries, workforce development, and growing the farm-to-school movement here in Rhode Island. Topics discussed in these sessions will inform several breakout sessions, which we will be co-hosting with these community leaders after this summit. Finally, you'll be hearing from Terry Gray, Director of the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, who will conclude our discussion to kick off the planning process. With this event, we hope to start a dialogue about what's happening in Rhode Island and what we can do to build a bright food sector for our state. As a reminder, the Food Summit will be recorded and posted to the Rhode Island Food Center website at the end of the event. We will be taking periodic breaks, so feel free to use the time to grab a coffee, stretch your legs, and during the breaks, we'll be showing some fantastic videos, one of which you just saw, of activities taking place around our state with regard to the food system. So be sure to stay tuned in. Before we begin today, we'd like to recognize and pay tribute to the people who lived on and stewarded the land that the University of Rhode Island now resides on. Silver Moon LaRose, Assistant Director of the Tamaqua Museum, will be reading URI's land acknowledgement today.
Asquequasanumis, Natasui Silver Moon LaRose, Ni Nahahaganse Kanayantik, Kanupiam Wachini Tampua Kanatansuaga Aki at Nahahagansek. Hello, my name is Silver Moon LaRose, and I'm a citizen of the Narragansett Nation and descendant of the Niantic. I wanted to welcome all my friends and relatives to the homelands of the Narragansett. The practice of opening a public event with a land acknowledgement has become more commonplace in the United States as a countermeasure to the erasure of Indigenous people. These statements are meant to disrupt life as usual, requiring of us a moment to reflect on the land around us. These lands are the ancestral territories of hundreds of distinct cultures who've been living on Turtle Island, existing as sovereign nations, governing, protecting, and stewarding these lands for centuries. The University of Rhode Island, a land-grant university, occupies the traditional homelands of the Narragansett Nation and was purchased using funds from the sale of the ancestral lands of the Kiowa Nation. What is now the state of Rhode Island occupies the unceded territories and waterways of the Narragansett, Eastern Niantic, Wampanoag, and Nipmuc peoples. These land acknowledgements are a collective realization that non-Native people live in the United States at the expense of Indigenous communities. Everywhere you go in the United States is Indigenous land, gained at an immense cost of violent and inconvenient truth. So a land acknowledgement is not a performance. It is a call to action, a pledge to enact change. And every time we hear a land acknowledgement, we should feel the inspiration to uplift one another, transforming society to not only recognize Indigenous nations, but support their sovereignty through our actions.
Thank you, Silver Moon and the Tamaqua Museum. Next, we'd like to show a video, pre-recorded, a welcome from our URI president, Mark Parlange. Mark Parlange became the University of Rhode Island's 12th president on August 1st of 2021. He's a distinguished researcher and a global higher education leader. Dr. Parlange joins URI from Monash University in Australia, where he served as provost and senior vice president.
Good morning. Welcome to the 7th annual and 3rd virtual Rhode Island Food Systems Summit, hosted by the University of Rhode Island Business Engagement Center. Welcome to Senator Jack Reed, members of the Governor's Office and Rhode Island Commerce, and all the representatives joining us from our state and local government. We are pleased to once again be hosting this event that brings together stakeholders from across our food system as we discuss the issues most important to our state, our region, and our nation. URI is the state's land and sea grant institution at the forefront of research and innovation, especially in agriculture and aquaculture. In fact, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris just visited the Philippines, where she met with members of a URI team that have been leading an international initiative to create sustainable fisheries in the country. Our faculty and staff are also working on programs like food recovery for Rhode Island, which help Rhode Islanders change their practices around food to be more sustainable. Faculty and staff and students across our campus have helped address food insecurity at URI through an award-winning free farmers market, which provides our community with excess food that is grown on our research farms. And we are leading an effort to boost sea urchin farming in New England by providing seed stock and technical advice at no cost. And faculty in our College of Pharmacy are working to understand the nutritional and chemical composition of natural food products, including maple syrup. We have big plans at URI. We have a vision to support the growth of agricultural technology in Rhode Island. We are working on hiring faculty who specialize in controlled environment agriculture, who will help support the growth of the industry and meet the growing needs of our food system. We will also be partnering with Matunic Oyster Farm to grow the oyster industry in the state. URI is the ideal convener for the Rhode Island Food Systems Summit, and we are pleased to be partnering this year with the Rhode Island Commerce Corporation and Julianne Stelmazik, Rhode Island's Director of Food Strategy. This is the first of several events that will focus on how we can build an effective food strategy for the state, one that will support good jobs, grow the state's agriculture and aquaculture systems, support families in need, and drive innovation. And we look forward to hearing your ideas about how we can move our food system forward. Thank you all for joining us, and enjoy the day.
Thank you to President Parlange for that fantastic video. He's on university travel right now and wasn't able to be here, but he and his wife have been amazing advocates for the food sector, including growing chickens on the president's lawn. So they're really a fantastic addition to the University of Rhode Island when it comes to this sector. Next, we'll show a pre-recorded welcome from Senator Jack Reed. Jack Reed has been an amazing supporter, longtime supporter of the food sector and food innovation in the state of Rhode Island. And his video will show you exactly what I mean by that.
Hi, I'm Senator Jack Reed. I am pleased to welcome you to the 7th Annual Rhode Island Food Systems Summit. I'd like to thank President Palage, Catherine Flynn, and everyone at the URI Business Engagement Center for their leadership and for hosting this important event. Food is the basic building block of health and well-being. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, we made a concerted effort to ensure that the most vulnerable people in our communities got the nutrition assistance that they needed. With strong federal investments and the extraordinary efforts of local organizations, we made a real difference. But as the Rhode Island Food Bank's 2022 status report on hunger showed, food security remains out of reach for thousands of Rhode Islanders. As we gear up to pass a new farm bill in the new Congress, we need to build on those earlier investments in our local food networks. And we need to harness our local growers and food-based businesses, which are an important part of our economy and offer a pathway to financial security for thousands of Rhode Islanders. I've been proud to work to support many of these efforts here in Rhode Island by providing federal funds to help DEM and Farm Fresh Rhode Island purchase local foods for distribution to food pantries, securing earmarks to help URI develop a shellfish hatchery and research center with the Matunic Oyster Farm, and to help Roger Williams University expand its aquaculture research capacity. Securing funding to sustain USDA's research on shellfish resilience here at the University of Rhode Island. Securing a federal disaster declaration to help local farms affected by the summer's drought. I've also worked to earmark federal funding for local organizations like Hope in Maine, which continues to do great work in helping launch new local food-based businesses, and the Genesis Center, whose culinary hub of Providence offers workforce training in the culinary arts. Finally, I led the effort to have the Government Accountability Office find new ways to bring local seafood into school meal programs. These local and federal efforts will help our state continue its shift toward locally grown food. Our local farms and processes not only increase Rhode Island's access to fresh, healthy food, but also support thousands of jobs. We must continue to invest in our local food systems and the small businesses that provide good jobs and affordable, wholesome food. That is why I'm so pleased that you are all here today, and I look forward to seeing the great ideas and actions that come out of this summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Senator Reed and his team for providing us that video. It truly is a testament to his passion for this sector. A more pre-recorded video is from our new Commerce Secretary, Liz Tanner.
Hello, everyone. My name is Liz Tanner, and I'm very proud to be Rhode Island's Commerce Secretary. I'm also a proud Rhody grad. Thank you to the University of Rhode Island Business Engagement Center for once again hosting the Rhode Island Food Systems Summit. Commerce RI is thrilled to collaborate with our state's Land and Sea Grant Institution to bring this event together. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there today. The presenters and discussions you will hear today will be critical as we make decisions around Rhode Island's next food strategy. Our current food strategy is one that represents a true commitment from stakeholders just like you, who have dedicated countless hours to identifying ways to grow our food system. Through this strategy, we've been able to grow the industry, create new jobs, and offer more opportunities for Rhode Islanders to access locally grown food. However, the work is not done, and we need your help once again. Commerce RI, through the leadership of Julie Stelmazik, are looking to create the next food strategy, which will inform the direction of our food system to 2030. We want to hear from you what is most important, what is most exciting to you, where are the opportunities for growth, and where there are challenges. We need stakeholders like you to think critically about where our state needs to go. Rhode Island's diverse food cultures and agricultural and fishing prowess have indeed put us on the map. Our continued investment in promoting innovation and food-based entrepreneurship will undoubtedly keep us there. But work remains to close the gaps in our food system and catalyze its full economic and social potential for the state. We are looking to you, Rhode Island, to build our dominance in the local food space and ensure all Rhode Islanders benefit from fresh, locally grown food. Thank you all for joining in defining the future of Rhode Island's food system, and enjoy the day. Thank you.
And thank you, Secretary Tanner. Before I introduce our first speaker, I would like to note that you can feel free to ask questions on any of the, by accessing any of the different interfaces from the Business Engagement Center today, either YouTube or Twitter. If time allows, we'll be pulling questions from our audience to pose to our speakers. And also don't forget to post at the hashtag RIFoodSummit23 when you post about today's event on social media. So now it's time to hear from our first speaker of the day. Julie Stamazik, Director of Food Strategy for the Commerce Corporation. Her position is also supported by the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management and Rhode Island Department of Health. Julie joined the Commerce team in 2021 with a decade of experience in the food and agriculture sector, working in schools, businesses, institutions to address sustainability issues and increase regional procurement. Most recently, Julie served as the manager for regional and sustainable food systems for Boston College, where she launched an initiative to increase institutional procurement of regional food in support of the New England Food Vision. And she implemented sustainability strategies to improve environmental and social impact on campus food services. We'd like to hear now, welcome Julie Stamazik. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you, Catherine. Good morning, and thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm so pleased to be here today on the University of Rhode Island campus for the 7th Rhode Island Food System Summit. I want to thank Catherine Flynn and Sharon Pavignano at the URI's Business Engagement Center for all they've done to plan this summit year after year. Since its inception, the summit has served as an annual gathering of partners across state government, academia, industry, and the nonprofit sector to discuss critical issues and opportunities for the Rhode Island food system. While part of me wishes we could be in person today after so much time on Zoom, this online format does allow for more of you to join. In fact, this year's summit, I'm told, brings over 350 participants. And before I begin, I'd love to know where you are calling in from. Where's your organization based? Primarily, where does your food work center? Which geographic area do you serve? So please take a moment to put that in the chat as we ponder the power of our collective impact. It's so fitting that the summit is hosted here at URI's Land and Sea Grant University. The administration, researchers, students, and the URI community serve as constant expertise and connectivity for Rhode Island's food system in so many ways. The co-op extension provides technical assistance to farms and fishers and teaches the general public about composting and sustainable gardening. Food businesses benefit from the talent pipeline and the R&D connections made by the Business Engagement Center. The Research Foundation has supported Rhode Island Commerce and Governor McKee's administration on developing a visionary blue economy strategy to inform future policy and investments. And faculty here continue to elevate the importance of food. The focus of last fall's honors colloquium was creating sustainable and resilient food systems. The series hosted an incredible lineup of national food leaders like Winona LaDuke, Leah Penniman, and Ricardo Salvador. Speakers reminded us of the connections between indigenous foodways, food justice, urban farming, and labor in the food system. I'd like to thank the faculty coordinators, Marta Gomez Chiari and John Taylor, for planning such a fantastic series. I've attended the summit for several years, although this is my second time in my role as Rhode Island's Director of Food Strategy. I always look forward to this moment in the dead of winter to reflect on the work of the last year, and much like farmers, begin planning and planting for the next growing season. In my role, I lead implementation of the state's food strategy, known as Relish Rhody. In my work, I help to develop and support initiatives which increase long-term food security, promote access to healthy and locally grown foods, and support economic development in the food sector. If you've never heard of Relish Rhody, here's a quick refresher. In 2016, concerted efforts were made by the administration to establish the state's first ever food strategy and hire a new food systems position within state government, making Rhode Island, I'm told, just one of 2 states in the nation with such a position. It was unique because it took a systems approach to food policy and programs by connecting issues across public health, economic development, the environment, and agriculture. By 2017, a 5-year strategy was launched, charting a path for a more resilient, sustainable, and equitable food system in Rhode Island. Relish Rhody, as it was called, laid the groundwork to build a more resilient food system through 5 core areas. Improve the climate for food and beverage businesses and create new market opportunities for Rhode Island products. Minimize and divert food waste and ensure access to healthy and culturally relevant foods for all. Last year, I used my talk at the summit to reflect on the impacts of the food industry and the food strategy, sharing my observations after my first full year on the job. It was a moment to take stock of what we have accomplished together in the last 5 years and what we learned amidst the challenges of the pandemic. This year, I'd like to focus on the future. Where are we headed? And how can we leverage learnings and momentum of the last few years towards achieving our food goals? In recent years, the food system has undergone important shifts, which were accelerated by the pandemic. We are at an inflection point, which calls for fresh evaluation and an updated food strategy. Therefore, I'm so excited to announce that this year we are officially kicking off the planning process to renew our food vision, or as we're calling it, Relish Rhody 2.0. I'll be leading this effort with state agency partners at the Department of Environmental Management, Health and Human Services, the Commerce Department, and many nonprofits and industry collaborators on the call today. We hope to engage many stakeholders like you across the food industry and nonprofit sectors to identify shared goals and a common agenda over the next 7 years. I'm eager to share more about our process and priorities that we have planned, but first I want to take a moment to look back at the impacts of our first food strategy. In the last 5 years, we made so much progress towards our food goals. Several state-led initiatives, which you can see here on the screen, have driven growth and innovation for the food economy, directing millions of public dollars to supporting our local food businesses, nonprofits, and producers. During the pandemic, state agencies worked together to bring more than $5 million in federal grant funding to support our local food system. These funds are already being deployed across the state. They're buying food from Rhode Island farmers and fishers to support schools and emergency food assistance programs. They'll help develop a wastewater expansion plan in Narragansett to bring more seafood processing back to our shores. They're expanding mental health supports and technical assistance for the farm, fish, and forestry industries. And they're helping to expand farm-to-school programs for kids across the state, just to name a few. In the last few years, the Commerce Department has invested more than $25 million in critical food infrastructure and businesses through loans, incentives, and grant programs, which stimulate innovation and support business expansion. We've already seen, in fact, the impact, particularly with early stage and mid-supply chain entities like Hope in Maine, Farm Fresh Rhode Island, and Southside Community Land Trust's new farm-to-market center in Providence. All of these help create more market opportunities for often disadvantaged, beginning, and BIPOC farmers and food makers. We've seen the network of food stakeholders across the state grow, thanks to the good work of the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, which has engaged legislators and everyday citizens in food policy issues. They've also been a valuable partner in helping the state to grow the Hunger Elimination Task Force and make sure that we have sound data to make decisions about our food system going forward. Innovative partnerships like the one between the Rhode Island Community Food Bank and Hope's Harvest have connected local farmers to help supply the emergency feeding system. And public health advocates with the Nourish RI campaign successfully advocated last year for a new pilot program, SNAP incentive, to lower the cost of healthy food for families. Governor McKee and the General Assembly boosted funding last year to almost $700,000 for a decades-long successful program known as LASA, the Local Agriculture and Seafood Act, which provides critical capital to early stage and growing farmers and fishers. In the face of unprecedented food insecurity, more than $7 million of ARPA funds went to helping nonprofits feed families and address longstanding food gaps. Across the state, we're also seeing new business ventures and innovative partnerships at the intersection of health and sustainability. Food leaders are seeing the potential of our food innovation ecosystem. Here is just a smattering of headlines, believe it or not, just from the last 12 months. However, amidst all this progress and growth, the benefits have not been felt equally, which is why our updated food strategy needs to take an honest look at what is working and what's not. The state food economy continues to grow, generating $12 billion in economic activity, or 20% of our GDP, and sustains more than 70,000 jobs. Yet these benefits are unevenly distributed, with many food, farm, and seafood businesses struggling to compete. The pandemic shifted consumer behaviors towards buying more local food at farmers markets and docksides, but at the same time, global economic conditions drove up labor and production costs, putting new burdens on small and mid-sized businesses. Just to give an example, the cost of fertilizer inputs, which many farmers rely on, more than doubled since last year as a result of supply chain disruptions and the war in Ukraine. This has also contributed, among other factors, to a 40-year food price inflation. The price of basic goods like eggs jumped 50% in the last year. For some, this is manageable. We can make adjustments. But for many Rhode Islanders, it forces hard decisions between basic needs. As we've heard, the Rhode Island Community Food Bank's recent report on hunger informed us of some sobering statistics. Today, 1 in 3 Rhode Island households can't afford adequate food. And unfortunately, this is even higher for single parents and communities of color. We cannot accept this reality. We're also in the midst of ecological and climate crises. Experts tell us we have just 10 years to make drastic changes. With more intense fires and floods in our region, we rely on our food. In fact, it's estimated that Rhode Island imports some 90% of the food that we eat from outside of the Northeast, which leaves us dependent on distant supply chains. And here at home, just in the last year, we're already seeing the impacts of more extreme weather on our agriculture and food systems, with the drought and flooding we experienced in the span of just a few weeks last September. It's clear that there is so much more to be done in the next decade. But the good news is that experts and our own experience has taught us that investing in a more regional food system drives positive social, economic, and environmental outcomes. The 2017 food strategy laid important groundwork for building a better food system in Rhode Island. Our new vision needs to outline a compelling response to the lessons learned during the pandemic. It should leverage strengthened networks and scale proven models for success. As we begin the process of developing our 2030 food strategy, I'd like to share 4 priorities that I hope will guide us in the process. We must think regionally. We have to think towards our regional food shed. Rhode Island has so many small farms and a diversity of food products. Yet we have more eaters than producers, and we should prioritize regional collaboration with our neighboring New England and Northeast states to import what we can't grow in volume, like dairy and grains, and export what we can, like seafood. This will be an important principle to build resilience and adaptability into our food system. And we should work closely towards regional goals like the New England Food Vision, which calls for 30% regional food production by 2030. Food systems and climate are inextricably connected. How we produce, eat, and dispose of food contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions, and at the same time, it has the potential to mitigate some of its worst impacts. Equity is essential. Our food economy is growing, but not for everyone. Low income and too often communities of color are disproportionately impacted by diet-related diseases due to lack of access to healthy food and the resources they need for economic mobility. We must address racial and social inequities across the food system and listen to our fellow Rhode Islanders. And lastly, we must build on our strengths, our small size, deep history, and distinct culture are Rhode Island's strengths, and we should use it to our advantage. I frequently hear that Rhode Island punches above its weight. As a small state, we're innovative, we're collaborative, we're adaptable and connected. We have an award-winning restaurant industry, a legacy fisheries industry, and a standout food innovation ecosystem. We have all the pieces to make this work. Our keynote speaker, Sophie Egan, will be speaking about collective impact and the power of partnerships. This could not be more relevant as we kick off our Relish Roadie 2.0 planning process. With this in mind, I've asked a few of our partners to convene different stakeholders this year around important issues that we hope to address in the new strategy. Shortly, you will hear about some of the follow-on sessions that will be held on topics this spring. If you're interested in getting involved in the process, you can learn more by visiting relishroadie.com. In his State of the State address last night, Governor McKee said that with the federal stimulus funding, we have an opportunity like we've never had before. And I have to agree. Now is an exciting time to take advantage of federal investments and a growing national and global agenda that's finally seeing the value of food systems. We know that food is more than just fuel. As Michael Pollan once said, it's about family, it's about community and identity. We nourish these things when we eat. Over the next year, I look forward to working with you as we chart a bold path for a renewed food vision. Thank you so much for listening, and now I'll turn it back to Catherine.
Thank you, Julie. Lots of food for thought, no pun intended. That was great. I really appreciate it, and there will be an opportunity to ask Julie some questions a little bit later in the session. Once again, though, in terms of your questions, please access the URI Business Engagement Center YouTube and Twitter pages. If the time allows, we'll be pulling questions from our audiences to pose to our speakers. There will likely be a lot of questions that we can't particularly answer because we just don't have the time, but we will post answers to those questions on our website following the summit. And don't forget that when you post about the summit on social media, please use the hashtag RIFoodSummit23. During the next break, we're going to play a video created by one of our partners, FM Global. The FM Global has been kind enough to fund us for some of the work at our farms. We'll be back at 9:45 to hear from our keynote speaker, but in the meantime, enjoy this video.
I'm at the University of Rhode Island at the Rhode Island Food Center with Professor Rebecca Brown. So how are you doing, Rebecca?
I'm doing great.
You guys have been doing some phenomenal things in the community, and I would really love to hear more about all the initiatives that you have going on.
One of the initiatives we're doing here on campus is our free farmers market, which is a farmers market for students. And this is an initiative that's designed to help fight food insecurity on campus, to help improve nutrition among students who have a tendency not to eat their fruits and vegetables.
Which we all need.
Yes, we do.
What do you all do when it comes to sustainability? Because, you know, that's really a focus that we should start turning our eyes to now.
Yeah, so we're very focused on sustainability and agriculture. Agriculture here in Rhode Island is very much about producing high-value foods for direct sale to consumers. Our land is very, very expensive. So we work with growers to do things like extend their season, also helping them learn to grow new crops as our climate changes and as we get changes in demographics in our communities. We're growing new crops, things like okra or saffron or peanuts that we haven't traditionally grown in Rhode Island.
But now look, I'm ready to see some of this produce because I know we got this big, beautiful house.
It's a high tunnel, which is an unheated, passive greenhouse.
I had the opportunity when I first got here to meet two of your students, which just hearing the knowledge that you were sharing with them or teaching them.
Dr. Brown showed me that there's so much more to farming and agriculture than just rows and rows of field. There are just so many opportunities and different ways to explore agriculture that I didn't know before, that I'm really glad that Dr. Brown was able to show me and like made me realize my passion more for farming, and just seeing how confident she is with her knowledge and her ability to grow plants just makes me feel more like excited about my own future and my own possibility of pursuing a career in farming.
I'm not a traditional student. I'm a veteran. I served in the Army and the Air Force Reserves, and then when I got out, I was a little bit lost, and then I found plants, and then my love of farming grew. I came here a couple years ago and was very intimidated by Dr. Brown, but when you get to know her, she is patient and kind, and she really wants you to learn the material, and it is so empowering to have a woman in a leadership role and to see that, you know, you can do it too.
This is a job well done, and just continue to keep doing what you're doing, and let's go get some of this crop.
All right.
Miss Rebecca has brought us into the high tunnel. This is crimson okra, correct?
Yes, it is.
So tell me about crimson okra.
So crimson okra is just a different variety that's been selected for the color in the pods and the stems and the bases of the flowers.
So I assume you guys have different types to choose from, right?
We have jade, which is a southern heirloom variety.
Do you mind if we take a look at the jade? I would love for people to see that.
Sure, let's go on down the road.
Let's do it.
All right, so we're in the jade now.
Oh, we're in the jade world
We
here.
are in the jade world. That's what that one
beautiful,
looks like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, so vibrant. Rebecca, I truly commend you on the amazing work that you're doing here in the community and for the farmers. It means so much. But look, I got to get out of here because I got 100 of my closest friends over at FM Global waiting on me. And guys, you know I'm bringing that okra for you. Chef Jannard is coming. The skillets are fired up and we finna eat good.
FM Global has been a good community partner. We are one of the leading donors for the United Way of Rhode Island, and we recently donated $1 million to the URI engineering complex here on campus. So we're very active in the community, and what's been interesting is this event has given us the opportunity to look at other types of partnerships, and in particular looking for things that align with our core values as an organization and what we're trying to do. And we have a pretty significant emphasis right now on helping our clients be climate resilient and being resilient to the impacts of climate change. Part of what they're doing is looking at how to make our food systems more climate resilient, whether it's the crops that they're growing or different farming practices and techniques that they're using here, so that we have reliable sources of food, quality food, here in our communities now and in the future.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that video. FM Global has just been an amazing corporate partner for the University of Rhode Island, and particularly in the food sector. So next, we'll be hearing live from Colorado from Sophie Egan. She's an internationally renowned author and leader at the intersection of food, health, and climate. Sophie Egan is the author of a book called How to Be a Conscious Eater, which was named one of Bon Appetit's favorite new books for the climate-friendly cooking and life. She's also the founder of Full Table Solutions, a consulting practice that is a catalyst for food systems transformation. She's a contributor to the New York Times Health section. She's an internationally recognized leader. Sophie serves as the Director of Strategy for the Food for Climate League, as well as the Director of the Stanford Food Institute and a Senior Advisor for the Sustainable Food Systems at R&DE Stanford Dining. Sophie's writing has been featured in numerous national publications, including the Washington Post, Time, Parents, and the Wall Street Journal. Welcome, Sophie Egan.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you.
Can't hear.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all of you for joining us. It's my distinct pleasure calling in, as was mentioned, from snowy Colorado. And just want to confirm we can pull up my slides and that everyone can see those. Terrific. All right, well, thank you so much to the organizers of this phenomenal summit. It's incredibly exciting to have such a galvanizing moment like this. And I'm really thrilled to be here today to talk to you about accelerating solutions at this intersection of food, health, and climate. And the theme throughout my presentation is really collective impact and the power of partnership. As was noted, I wear a lot of hats. I've been told I should get a very, very, very tall coat rack to fit all these hats. And while I'm working on having actual physical hats made so that every time I talk to you, it's clear which perspective I'm speaking from, until that time, I will just highlight the different roles that I'm referencing and really the vantage points that I'm speaking from. The way I think about my work as a whole is that I'm advancing food systems change and really working in a collective way across countless different collaborators from both bottom up and top down. And really these roles are all interconnected. It's more of a web than a list. The bottom up part, you can think of it as supply and demand. The bottom up demand portion is really equipping eaters with the tools, the knowledge, and the evidence base to signal with their food choices, with their actual votes, and vote with their forks, that they care about this more sustainable, healthy, equitable future of food, and to participate in shaping it through those choices. But what I know from my training in public health and also in systems change is that individuals are products of their environments, and we cannot expect people to simply have the willpower or the education that those alone will lead to change, but rather we need to create what social scientists refer to as the enabling environments. And that's where all of this work from the top down comes in. It's shaping food environments, the marketplace of options, the supply side, if you will, to ensure that these options are easy, culturally relevant, budget appropriate, and easy to find and enjoy and varied, and honestly, equally delicious and alluring as well. But also that the policies and the physical choices, the food choice architecture surrounding individuals are really supportive of these options that happen to support their health and that of the planet. So you can think of this, if you've ever seen this great diagram, really my goal with all these different roles is to see the big picture and to work on truly systems change, which all of you are involved in, but to see the whole and to see how all of the different pieces fit together. This is a really wonky diagram called the social ecological model. And it's one of my favorite diagrams because it just reminds us that there are many different levels and all of us might be working on different points of intervention. And it's helpful to think about how these interrelate, but also to know how to tailor what you're working on depending on which level which sphere of influence you might operate in. So my writing, the book, is really at that individual level. It's knowledge, attitude, skills. And the crux of how to be a conscious eater is essentially resource efficiency. I went to the trouble of combing all of the literature and answering the most top of mind questions about what to eat and how to make food choices that are good for you, others, and the planet. And it's really a kind of a one-stop shop for the most common questions because it's bewildering, it's complex, it's overwhelming. And so each of you as practitioners can think of this as sort of an offer of a primer, the kind of enough knowledge to make really evidence-based, data-driven recommendations, programs, etc., but also to think again more holistically. A key theme of the book and also of my work is that intersectionality. It's not enough to think myopically or in terms of tunnel vision. How we evaluate food choices through just a metric of, say, only carbon sequestration or only added grams of sugar in a given product and say, therefore, that this is good or bad. But much of the work at hand stems from the in-between, the gray areas. That said, there are really clear themes that the science tells us, and we heard some of this in Julie's great presentation. So the book has these different sections and top takeaways, and again, I offer it as essentially a primer to inform your work so that when you're working to accelerate solutions, you're ensuring that they're solutions that are rooted in the science. So, little audience interaction and make sure that everyone is paying attention, but also just to hear from you, kind of the extent to which this is common knowledge or not. Little poll question. So this is the first of 3, and you can write your answer just into the chat. There won't be a poll that comes up, but just write it into the chat. Which of these foods takes the most water to produce? So is it 1 handful of almonds? Is it a glass of milk? Is it 1 hamburger or 1 chocolate bar? And I'll take a look to see if folks, I see almonds and almonds. Tell me what you think. Is it a handful of almonds? Is it a glass of milk? I see 1. Yeah, you can use the number 2, or in addition, not the number 2. So I see one, a lot of ideas about one. A few people think hamburger, number 3. Okay, it's a tight race. Give it one more second. I vote for milk. All right. So the answer, drum roll, is actually hamburger. And the reason that I bring this up is not to demonize hamburgers, but to show you that when we work on solutions, it again is important to think about replacement and what are we trying to increase in the food system, the prevalence of, what are we trying to recommend in our educational and engagement programs, and also think about foods as opposed to what. So often media headlines really oversimplify or drive some of that tunnel vision. Here's almonds. Do they take a lot of water? Yes, but so do a lot of our other favorite foods. Coffee, cheese, avocado, egg, and all the way up here. This is a diagram that I created using a lot of different sources, but chocolate. Oh, nobody wants to hear that chocolate takes so much water to produce, but this is the reality. This is what the science shows. And it's to our detriment if we only kind of get into this very binary, very black and white, good, bad. But it's also an important theme about, in general, foods from the plant kingdom, by and large, are going to be part of a better food system for the future in greater proportion. And also almonds have nutritional benefits. So we want to think about those, again, those intersections and where we can find the win-win-wins. So poll question number 2 for you, again, type into the chat. Which of these foods has the lowest greenhouse gas emissions per gram of protein? Okay, so basically, which is the most sustainable from an emissions perspective of these types of protein? So is it dairy? Is it eggs? And dairy here is essentially milk, cheese, yogurt. Is it beef? Is it poultry? And poultry would be chicken, turkey, mainly in the US. I'm seeing some votes for eggs, 1 for poultry, 1 for dairy. Okay, so mostly eggs. You all are correct. Great work. So I share this example because at the same time that I'm sharing with you this diagram about hamburgers and water footprint, and that by and large sort of a plant forward direction for the food system is going to be helpful, it's not as simple as plant-based or bust, as we all, often this gets conflated as meaning that we have to turn every eater vegan, and that, you have to eliminate meat altogether, and meat and dairy and all of these food groups that, again, folks really love and are cherished and parts of diets, but that it's more of a spectrum. And eggs are an animal-based protein. And so when we're in these conversations where it's again, this very all or nothing sort of plant-based is the only way forward, we may be overlooking that a really often, well, until recent inflation and avian flu, a very affordable source of protein, but also culturally relevant in countless cuisines. Eggs are nutritious and have other benefits. So it's not, I'm not here on behalf of the egg board or anything like that, but it's just a reminder to look at things on a scale, and also to use different metrics or different lenses, apertures, when we're evaluating foods, to understand the relative impacts. And also that, just to go back to this, that as you're making shifts, I'm going to share some examples from my work in a moment, but as you're making shifts, to think about also trading down and incremental changes from the highest emissions to lowest sources. It doesn't have to mean going entirely from beef to lentils overnight. So this, again, this is just a theme of what the science tells us, that to optimize not only human health, but environmental health, really this kind of foods from the plant kingdom are going to be a good way forward. And you can see that there's a tremendous amount of consensus. This is a menus of change principles list from the Culinary Institute of America and Harvard Chan School. This is at kind of a menu and food service level of intervention. This is at a plate, individual plate level, the Eat Lancet report, a global consensus paper. And so wherever you sit, once again, it's just really this reminder of kind of the broad themes of what some of the science will really point us to. And also, as we're thinking about what Julie shared, the role of food and climate. Project Drawdown actually lists this plant-rich diets as the #2 most effective solution for reversing global warming, is to make this shift towards plant-rich diets. So I personally get out of bed every day just excited by the huge role that food and climate, that food-related climate solutions can play, because climate in particular is so overwhelming and daunting, but the solutions, many of them do actually lie in food and agriculture, and that I hope is a really empowering and exciting message. So I started this consulting practice, Full Table Solutions, because I saw a theme really emerging across so much great work, which was that although there are a ton of individuals and organizations doing fantastic work on food, health, and climate that is tremendously inspiring and important, there are at least 3 problems, and probably more, but at least 3 problems in how they're going about it. Often it's not coordinated, it's usually not measured, and it's just not moving fast enough. Again, we heard in the previous presentation the deadline that scientists have given us, and we have no time to waste. So I'm going to share now 3 specific examples of how I try to embed this idea of coordinating and measuring and accelerating into my daily work. So I'm really grateful and so proud and humbled to be embedded in organizations that are driving food systems change and in these leadership roles, and through that really see the value of partnership and collaboration, really see the value of measurement and acceleration. So one of my roles is the director of the Stanford Food Institute and Sustainable Food Systems. Just briefly, Stanford Dining, Hospitality, and Auxiliaries serves 25,000 meals a day across 100 locations. We're supported by 900 incredible staff, and I lead our sustainable food program. So one of the things that we know is that sustainability means many different things to different people. I'm not going to go through all of the pillars, but we've really aligned on a way to focus our efforts, our purchasing power, our thought leadership, our menu and culinary creativity, and so forth. And the example I'm going to share is within this first pillar of climate smart dining. So I mentioned that the science is clear from Product Drawdown as one key example of the power of plant-rich diets, but also food waste prevention and reduction, which is actually rated the #1 solution. And not just the #1 solution for in food and agriculture, but the #1 overall climate solution, which is just incredibly, it's an incredible call to action. But we work on these things. We work on plant-forward menus. We work on food waste reduction. And we, our visionary leaders, Dr. Shirley Everett and Eric Montel, really saw the power, the importance of amplifying and sharing what we're learning from that real-world setting of our dining program across the broader industry, not only the higher education and other universities, but the broader food service industry. And that's really the spirit behind the founding of the Food Institute that I'm proud to lead, which is a platform for sharing and exchanging ideas. And that's a big part of Coordinate, right? It's just talk to others, share what's working, what's not working, what are the challenges, what are the barriers? Because the crux of the work of food systems change is that we see these scientific reference points, we see what the data tells us, and then we roll up our sleeves and figure out how do we implement changes based on what the science tells us. And it's that implementation science, if you will, the change management, mobilizing across collective resources and wisdom and knowledge of our communities. That's the hard work, but that's really what the Institute serves to do across education, research, and innovation. So those 2 areas that I mentioned we focus on within climate smart dining of food waste reduction and plant-rich diets, we're really grateful to work with faculty actually across all 7 schools of the university, in addition to working with countless universities elsewhere. And so the first example is that we shared, we actually published 2 playbooks this year of what we are considering high impact strategies for climate smart dining. The first is our food waste prevention playbook, and the second is our food choice architecture playbook, which is essentially how we're engineering, how we're creating that enabling environment in our locations to make it so that our students find it delicious, craveable, beautiful, alluring, and also just easy and default to choose options that happen to be quite nutritious and sustainable. So you can check these out. They're available. They're open source. And really the theme here is not that we figured it all out and it's perfect and everything that we've done will work in your environment. There, of course, is the need to tailor solutions to your own contexts. However, if we're all just going about it in our own silos, if we're all starting from scratch, if we're all kind of tweaking and iterating, we will not get to where we need to go in time collectively. So this is towards that idea of just sharing and amplifying what's working, what's not, barriers, solutions, strategies, ideas, and as much as possible, learning from one another through collective efforts and through partnership. So my last poll question for you, get ready to type into the chat again, is actually drawing from that food waste prevention playbook. And I'm curious to see if this is, if your answers are what we found to be the case or not, because we've heard from folks that our solutions are sometimes surprising. So which of these operational best practices for food waste reduction has the most, the biggest or the most positive environmental impact? Is it forecast and order accurately? Is it portion control or just-in-time cooking, meaning making only what is being demanded by students in that moment? Is it repurposing leftovers and upcycling, donating or food rescue, or toss? And that's where compost, but also below that landfill sits. So go ahead and type into the chat which you think is the most impactful. I'm seeing a lot of votes for C, one for A. So one for forecast, a lot for repurposing. One vote for B on portion control. Give folks just another couple seconds. A, C, B. Okay, a little bit of variety, actually quite across the board. This is fascinating. So that's what I was interested to see. In our case, we actually find that it's answer A. It's forecasting and ordering accurately, which if you look at the EPA's very well researched food recovery hierarchy, this is our own kind of version of that hierarchy. It's the same finding, which is that source reduction, so the furthest upstream, which is again a big theme of systems change and public health, which is my training, is that not even bringing food into your environment to waste it in the first place is actually where you're going to have the biggest impact. So the more that you can tweak and understand how to prevent and not just reduce food waste, the biggest impact you will have. These are all important strategies, but sometimes we see, like with the almonds example, that's the sort of airtime, the collective attention is not always going towards what the data tells us. There's tremendously important and fantastically innovative programs in, say, upcycling or in food rescue and donation, but sometimes they're a further downstream and potentially smaller impact. And again, not to say we shouldn't be working on those things, but are we collectively giving our sufficient attention to those maybe less sexy, but actually potentially more impactful, further upstream kinds of solutions? So that's the first example. And you see again the importance of coordinating, measuring, and accelerating solutions. I'm really proud to also serve within that role as co-director of the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative. This is a partnership of the Culinary Institute of America and Stanford, and we have 70 universities across the US and abroad who work together across 300 university-based leaders to cultivate the long-term well-being of all people and the planet, one student, one meal at a time. We use campus dining halls as living laboratories for behavior change to really assess what are the most effective ways to nudge eaters towards healthy and sustainable ways of eating. And one of our greatest contributions is what we call the Collective Impact Initiative. This all started, I had read a paper in the Stanford Social Innovation Review about this very abstract concept that we've now, over the years, put into practice. And I cannot say enough to others who work in food systems change about this framework. It's really about centralized data collection, sharing, having common metrics, and collective targets. There's tremendous power in a collective target because you're part of something bigger than your own footprint, but also you can accelerate progress by testing, iterating, and again, sharing solutions. We're really grateful to all of our partners. This is just the 27 universities that contributed data. And what you see is the hugely disproportionate impact in terms of emissions from just a relatively small amount of beef and lamb. We focus on protein in particular because of that outsized impact that it has on human and environmental health. And again, within the Collective Impact Initiative, we not only focus on emissions, but also the nutritional value. And it's an amazing display of working together. 61.6 million pounds of food, and also really the power of acceleration, because just between 2019 and 2021, we saw a collective 11% decrease in pounds of carbon emissions per pound of food purchased among these institutions. That's a 40% dent in our total 10-year goal towards 2030 of 25% reduction. And you'll also see that, yes, we reduced meat overall quite a bit, beef and lamb and poultry, which from my previous diagrams, hopefully is not surprising why we saw big impacts there. But we also increased dairy and eggs, and that's really part of that phased approach. Food systems change is not going to occur overnight. We're not going to remove all carbon from the atmosphere instantly. We're not going to change everyone's eating habits, but we can make some simple swaps. We can make some more, again, kind of trading down, if you saw the diagram on emissions, trading down within animal protein. And from here, continue to double down more on even plant-based proteins. But just in that first few years, this is where the greatest progress came from. This collective impact this shift has saved an astounding 45,000 people taking a round trip cross-country flight, that's the equivalent in emissions, and the water equivalent of 218,000 people showering for 10 minutes a day for an entire year. So there's your dose of social math for the day, and now you understand why everyone calls Stanford Nerd Nation. So shifting to my third and final example. I am also proud to be the director of strategy for a nonprofit startup called Food for Climate League. And if you remember the diagram I showed, or the visual I showed of the elephant, where everyone's kind of working on these different pieces, our niche, our specific contribution in Food for Climate League is about the messaging. I call it the last mile problem. We see tremendously positive efforts in food service, in packaged goods, in policy domains, and we work to support all of these, both public and private sector leaders, with nailing the messaging, because they might have fantastic programs or products or menu options, but how it's being talked about is actually inadvertently undermining its appeal. Often we see that food and climate narratives speak to the many, not the few, and as a result, climate smart food culture is still quite niche rather than being the norm. And our goal is really to democratize sustainable eating. So as I mentioned, it's identifying the specific area that we can work on. And this is part of Coordinate, which is to see, we're not going to be all things to all people. We're not going to try to reinvent all, plant forward culinary R&D. There's great chefs working on that, people who are better equipped to do that. But we can support this entire ecosystem of organizations, not only public and private, but also nonprofit and for-profit, by just helping change the language, which really makes a huge difference in whether or not people feel that's for me. Because right now we see that most sustainable food, the ways that sustainable food options are presented is often quite exclusive unintentionally. And it makes people feel that's only for white, wealthy people. It's not speaking to me. It's also only speaking to one of the core human needs of purpose. Go vegan because the planet is counting on you. Waste less food or you're a bad person. And that resonates with some folks some of the time, but we can really speak to everyone in more need states, that's the social science term, and connect to their more immediate values through climate smart food habits. And these other needs of control and community as well. So this is the ecosystem that I mentioned that we're really growing rapidly to support. All are welcome to continue to work with us. We're still a young organization. And I just wanted to briefly share this one example with you to give you an idea of how we kind of put this into practice from a perspective of partnership. So we partnered with an organization called Food and Planet. And together we're trying to drive demand for bivalves and seaweeds. And this is, again, using a scientific reference point, which is the Blue Food Assessment, a landmark publication that showed that to feed a growing global population while staying within planetary boundaries and supporting equitable livelihoods, we can really turn to aquatic food systems, and especially bivalves and seaweeds, to kind of increase their prominence in folks' diets compared to the levels at which they're currently eaten. And Food and Planet, they really focus on the power of, or on the the messenger of dietitians and health professionals who are one of the most trusted voices. It's another key kind of theme of our work is not only to nail the narrative, but to make sure you're enlisting support of those most trusted voices and messengers, because often it may not be, me, a sustainability person. No one wants to hear it from me, quite honestly, but they may hear it from a chef or a friend or a family member or a healthcare professional. And so we have worked together to do a lot of research. I won't go into all of this, but basically a lot of different types of both qualitative and quantitative data. And the parts to pay attention to are in red, which is that what we actually found was kind of what most eaters were looking for if they were going to increase consumption of this really healthy, really sustainable type of food, being bivalves, so mussels, clams, oysters, and scallops, and also seaweeds, is they would need to find ways for these foods to connect to their daily desire for control over their health, their finances, and their time, while also minimizing risks, meaning kind of questions about food safety and freshness and quality. We also saw a tremendous opportunity to connect folks, the social power of food and community, especially when it comes to bivalves. And purpose, that part that I mentioned is currently most used by a lot of the folks in marketing roles around sustainable food, was really relevant for just a certain subset of the population, which was coastal residents and those who are already most alarmed about climate. So the bottom line here is that you have to tailor your message to your audience. And it doesn't, it's essentially that a one-size-fits-all approach tends not to work. But it also really is an exciting opportunity to say, hey, we can make these foods appealing to a greater array of eaters, a wider swath of the population by leading with these other elements, leading with community, leading with control, and therefore inviting into these really, really nutritious and sustainable foods, a wider and more inclusive array of food culture. So a key part of what's coming soon in just a couple of weeks, which is going to be our eataquaticfoods.org open source communication toolkits that are offered to chefs, food service professionals, retailers, really anyone who's promoting food, promoting these kinds of foods, is that we're ultimately here to support the existing ecosystem of diverse stakeholders. We're already working to promote these options and just make sure that their wording, their framing, their narrative lenses are going to resonate with their target audiences as much as possible. And this, again, just reflects that core focus on coordinating, seeing where you can contribute most effectively and impactfully, and ensuring that there's measured, accelerated efforts to do so. So again, this diagram is intended to kind of remind you that wherever you sit, if you're working at a neighborhood level, a community level, a school, a workplace, an institution, perhaps you work at a federal or state policy level, perhaps you're just kind of getting started and trying to socialize these ideas with friends and family, wherever that's occurring. My call to action for you to close out is to ask yourself these three questions. Who else is working on what we're working on, and can you coordinate? Who's not at the table? Who should be? And with whom might you partner? Question 2 is around measurement. Are you tracking progress? And finally, accelerate. How might we move faster toward our goals? So to unpack these a little bit, I really just included these additional questions for you to think about later on and sit with, but to take this a step further, because it's not just about the actual the more tangible partnership, but the sharing of ideas, the sharing of solutions. And that's for things like the playbooks and these toolkits and so forth, but also learning where there aren't already good solutions to make sure that your time, your attention, and your resources are going towards the needs that are greatest. Measure, metrics. Too often we lean on just the sort of gut sense or intuition about what's going to work or not. And hopefully you've seen throughout this presentation what a big theme it is to really look to the science, track your progress, and learn from others what metrics make sense. And then lastly, accelerate. How to move faster toward your goals, and really mobilize the resources that are needed to do that, to understand the barriers, solve for those specific barriers, inspire domino effects among your collaborators. And then of course, systems thinking or bust. Be mindful as you're working quickly and in an accelerated manner to mitigate risk and ensure that you're minimizing unintended consequences. So I leave you with this offer to coordinate, measure, accelerate. As you heard, we have no time to waste. And really inspiringly, we have the solutions in hand. We just need to work more closely together to put them into practice. I'll stop there and leave our remaining time for some questions, which I understand we've got coming in quickly. So the first question here from Deborah, how does that pyramid relate to restaurant practices? So I'm going to assume that you're referring to the food waste prevention pyramid. So great question. It's going to be quite similar because anyone anyone providing food has to make orders ahead of time. You have to be guessing or forecasting into the future what somebody's going to order, what you think you're going to need. And there's a lot of variability, right? There's seasonal aspects. In our context of campus dining, there's things like final exam schedules and times of the year where we see that people eat quite differently. They eat differently at the beginning of a school year when it's this buffet of different options, and then they sort of settle into more rhythms, holidays, etc. And so all of those factors, not all of those factors, but most of those also apply in restaurant settings. And it comes down to really being quite rigorous with tracking. So we do production worksheets every single meal, everything we make, and that all gets fed into the central procurement, the central production kitchen who makes those procurement choices. And really I do encourage restaurants to think in those same ways. Of you'll start to see these patterns emerge. Okay, on Fridays versus Mondays, in October versus May, and the more that you can be kind of tweaking and calibrating, then that furthest upstream solution of forecasting and ordering correctly will be will have the biggest impact on your restaurant's practices. So I would say that the pyramid relates quite a bit, but of course there are some differences, particularly in terms of volume and scale that could affect that. So let's turn over to. All right, we've got another question here. What are my thoughts on plant-based meat? Yes, so this is a question I get a lot, and I'm happy to answer it. It's top of mind. My thoughts are that we need all the solutions we can get. You heard me say probably over and over like a broken record that we have no time to waste. And with that acceleration of solutions, we need a variety of solutions. We need all the tools in the toolkit, to mix metaphors. Because one of the other things I really think is important to understand is there is no silver bullet. There is not one solution. There is not one strategy that will fix everything that's wrong with food systems. They're too complex. There's too many layers. And so when it comes to this intersection of health and climate, you heard that kind of directionally plant forward, which I consider to be more of an emphasis rather than an all or nothing shift. On plant-based foods is going to be quite helpful. And some people, some eaters will really gravitate more towards options that are familiar. And so not just plant-based meats, but just the analogs in general, because all you're changing is the source, but the flavor is quite similar, the texture, the form, burger, hot dog, milk, right? All these in asterisks. And so behaviorally, that has been groundbreaking and a tremendous contribution to these shifts. Some people would argue that these are sort of stepping stones, that plant-based meats are more of a temporary solution once people kind of see that they feel full, they feel satisfied, they didn't have a bad experience afterward, there wasn't a weird aftertaste or whatever from eating foods from plant-based sources, that they'll kind of outgrow the analogs and then start to just eat more inherently plant-based foods, the more whole and minimally processed options like nuts, legumes, seeds, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. So that may be true for some folks, and it's essentially the answer is that there is room for plant-based analogs in the solution set, but also just to keep in mind that they're not a silver bullet. They're not perfect. There are questions on production practices, and again, that kind of unintended consequences question mark as far as monoculture or just growing a lot of as these options scale. Are we growing a ton of one thing, soy or pea protein or whatever it is, or peas, to make that large manufactured food? People will also tell you nutritionally that more whole and minimally processed are better. There's some improvements, I would say, on the ingredients list and on the nutrition facts of these options, but they're not perfect. So we have to take them with a grain of salt, and also see that, again, a lot of it's going to be tailoring to different types of audiences, and meeting folks where they're at, so it can play a role. I'm gonna see if I can look here. We've got a lot of good questions in the chat. And I really like this question from Vanessa. Can you speak more to the idea of organizations working toward collective impact targets? How much time do you have? No, just, I appreciate that you're interested in this, because it is a fairly nerdy, wonky concept, but it is tremendously powerful. When I'm asked kind of like, what's, the elevator pitch, the one thing I think is the answer to the climate crisis, my best, most simple way to say it is collective action. And what I mean is that science is one area that provides kind of a common North Star, but also collective frameworks, like what I shared with you about the collective impact framework, where we're all bought into the same kind of measurement system. We're all bought into the same end point. So not just directionally, we need to make the food system healthier, more sustainable, more equitable. Those are all important. But very tangibly, we're all committed to reducing food-related emissions by 25% by 2030. It gets the resources mobilizing, all kind of rowing in the same direction. And just that standardization really goes a long way. But the other thing that's really important about that initiative, and any organizations that might want to utilize something like that, is you need the kind of central organizing hub. So we have colleagues who actually do that data analysis, who the contributing entities report their data into. They also provide kind of collective learnings reports, where we're combing case studies and qualitative sort of lessons learned, anecdotes and so forth. And this construct only works when you have an organization like that. We also work really closely with the World Resources Institute, which is a very well-known kind of example of this collective effort, the Cool Food Pledge and the Cool Food Initiative. And we recently actually released, being the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, we recently released kind of a call to action in tandem with WRI, really about, with Cool Food, really about that point of, we are completely aligned on where we need to go and kind of what some of the tools are, and knowing that different organizations are going to be at different stages of buy-in. So we provided a bit of a visual sort of roadmap for just getting started. Read the evidence. You're further down the path. Maybe you want to make a public pledge. Maybe you're not ready to make a public pledge. Come join the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative and kind of incubate your ideas in a more shared, kind of behind the scenes manner. You're ready to make a pledge? Great. Go work with Cool Food and their tremendous resources. And then a step beyond that is a lot of entities now really getting into the weeds on Scope 3 emissions reduction, and again, depending where you're at, for food-related types of collective impact targets, for emissions-related types of collective impact targets, it really might depend where an organization is at on their journey. But can't say enough about the power of working towards those common goals, and really towards really utilizing shared measurement frameworks. Another resource that's relevant is that Stanford, which works with our own Scope 3 emissions program, actually just released a white paper that's trying to join the community of kind of researchers. SciMap is an example, who actually do the really in the weeds analysis, kind of a modeling and measurement of tracking this. And it's essentially an open source white paper of, here's how to select your emissions factors. So that's in the same kind of vein of just helping to get folks started on the path and save time and resources. All right, so next question is, when shopping, what is the most important criteria when selecting your food? Organic, local, humanely raised, chemical-free, etc. Great question. So the way that I best explain this in the book, How to Be a Conscious Eater, is that conscious eating is not a diet. It is also similarly not a silver bullet kind of, here's the secret, solution, but it's really more about a mindset and an intention to, throughout your lifetime, continuously improve the extent to which you're aligning your food choices with your values. So I can't tell you which of those is most aligned with your values. There are different reasons, different benefits to different types of criteria that you mentioned, right? So when possible, if I had to say one thing, it would be to find where there's the win-win-wins. At Stanford, we call this multi-solving. In the book, I really say it's that kind of sweet spot of the good for you, good for others, good for the planet. And the others is all those aspects of humanely raised, so it's animal welfare, but it's also worker conditions, wages, and the people, the hands that feed us. So the trifecta, if you will, is sort of the best possible case, but that's not always possible, right? You have to juggle competing priorities. And ultimately, we know that most people really aspire to eat in ways that do align more directly with their values, but there's other things getting in the way, time or cost, or not liking the taste, any number of other issues, access being a huge, broad area of a barrier. So my basic answer for you is just to kind of determine what's most important to you, and that may change over time, but to continuously raise your awareness of at least what the evidence shows us on these social, health, and environmental imperatives. Find where there's that multi-solving or win-win-win opportunity, which is there more often than not. And then when possible, at least try to make sure that it's addressing one of those three areas. Because if it's not good for you or the planet or others, is it really worth your hard-earned grocery dollars? So I think that we are at time, and I'm going to turn it back to our fabulous host. Catherine, thank you so much, and back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sophie. That was amazing. I don't know how you have time to eat or sleep with all those different roles. I mean, incredible. And so much for us to think about, especially here at the University of Rhode Island. So we really appreciate you taking the time with us today. Thank you. As a reminder to our audience, please feel free to ask questions of our speakers today by accessing the URI Business Engagement Center YouTube and Twitter pages, as we've said. And if time allows, we'll be pulling questions from our audience to pose to our speakers. There will be many questions that we are unable to get to, and we'll make sure to post those on the Business Engagement Center website after the summit. And as you're going on your social media accounts, please post about the summit at hashtag Rhode Island Food Summit 23. So we're taking it now from national to local. We're going to be hearing from two of our local partners. One, Perry Rasso, the owner of Matunic Oyster Farm. One of my favorite restaurants is Matunic Oyster Bar. This is Matunic Oyster Farm. And Marta Gomez-Chiari, who's a professor here at the University of Rhode Island in Fisheries, Animal, and Veterinary Sciences. Today, they're going to be talking about an exciting new industry-university partnership and collaboration. Welcome, Marta and Perry.
Thank you, Catherine. This is really a tough act to follow after Sophie, so we'll do our best to keep you entertained and informed about our local efforts. So, and I wanted to start with thanking Perry to be here with us.
My pleasure.
And let you know that this is a conversation, so we're looking forward to your questions. But I'm going to start the conversation with Perry, asking him how he got where he is.
I started in commercial fishing, digging little neck clams and trapping eels. I rod and reeled for fluke for a while and did kind of all three, but digging shellfish wound up being what I was best at, and so I did that and through college, and wound up after transferring a couple times at University of Rhode Island studying marine biology, which turned out to be too much reading for me. So I took a fisheries and aquaculture course, and I was like, it was Dave Butel was the professor, a teacher of that course, and I really, he was a commercial fisherman as well. So that really, really resonated with me, and so I stuck with that major, and which is when I met you 20-something years ago. And
but let's not get into
well,
that.
Let's not get into numbers, right? So after I finished I was finishing my undergraduate degree. It was actually Coastal Fellows program I was in before that they offered to help with grant writing, and at the time, Jack Reed had an aquaculture initiative to teach people about aquaculture to foster the acceptance of the industry in Rhode Island, and I was able to get that grant with the help of people at the Coastal Fellows Program and Jack Reed. And it was a grant that was a 3-year grant that helped me, put me in the field teaching about aquaculture, but also helped me start up a model 1-acre farm that could be toured by the public so they can see the realities of aquaculture and discuss the benefits of shellfish aquaculture, the environmental benefits. And after 3 years, I was selling oysters all over the country, Boston, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Atlanta, DC, and I wanted to ensure the future of the farm. And this was winter of 2008, 2009, really a lull in the economy. And I never wanted to be in the restaurant business, but there was a restaurant on the water, the only commercial property on the water that had docks, and I wanted to ensure the future of the farm. So I bought this kind of rundown clam shack that had been a restaurant but had been closed for a few years. And I bought it just so I can keep my boats there to access the farm. And we opened July 1st, 2009, and it got incredibly busy. So I kept, working the restaurant and grew the restaurant. And then I was buying vegetables, local vegetables from local farmers, and I knew from farmers markets. And that's where I kind of adapted the farm to plate, idea. I remember the first time eating arugula from one of these local farmers and be like, what is wrong with it? It's so spicy. There's something wrong with it. And I just kept eating it and I loved it. And I'm like, so that at that point I really started to appreciate local food too. And but I couldn't get enough of the local produce from these farmers, so I wound up starting a vegetable farm about in 2011, and I wound from there. Fast forward a few more years, purchasing the marina across from the restaurant, where I actually lived when I was in grad school, and starting a pilot scale hatchery with, again, with the help of the University of Rhode Island to see if a shellfish hatchery in that location would work, and we had really good results. And now, where we are today is with this partnership that we're going to build a full-scale hatchery with University of Rhode Island, and that is exciting.
That's really exciting because I think that hatchery not only helps the industry providing oyster seed, but it will also help a lot with research projects. So I wanted to ask you about some of the opportunities you think will come up from having the hatchery in Rhode Island. I know there's 2 other hatcheries in Rhode Island, but do you see a spot for yours, and what kind of things will it provide the industry? How will it help the seafood industry in Rhode Island?
What I'm most excited about, is the alternative species that will be able to, I think bay scallops, they're in the wild. We can sometimes get seed, but we usually can't get bay scallop seed. And being able to grow bay scallops, I think there's a huge market, huge potential market for the farm-raised bay scallop. When they're available to be harvested locally in the wild here, I mean, people just go crazy about it. It's one of the tastiest things that I've ever had is a raw bay scallop. And so
I love them.
They're just really, really nice. You from Galicia, which is like the scallop capital of the world.
Oh my God, I miss them so much. Yeah.
But so that is something, but also working with Dr. Suckling to perhaps come up with some urchin farming techniques and feeds is exciting, as well as seaweeds. We have, I'm in a position where, I can put it on the plate, in the restaurant and have people try it, and I don't have to, kind of try to sell it to a chef and try and market it to a chef, so we can, have captive audience over at Matunic Oyster Bar. We can, but to hopefully establish something that's really desirable to more mainstream markets for seaweed as well. So those are some, as well as being able to produce our own oyster seed for this market that we have here in Rhode Island with the 70 or 80 farmers that we have here.
Yeah, I know. That's one of the things I've heard a lot from farmers lately, is that the supply of oyster seed for farms in the east coast of the United States is limited, and it's kind of constraining the industry. Is that something that you've experienced yourself, having a hard time finding seed to plant?
Absolutely. I think over the years, I've had years, especially early on, where I wasn't as big of a customer for some of these hatcheries, where if the hatchery had a bad year, they cover their own farms, and then they cover their most important customers however much they can. and then some of the other farmers, don't have seed. And it's really, one of the things that really drove me to start applying for this shellfish hatchery years ago was a conversation I had with Skip Bennett from Island Creek Oyster Farm. He said, what would Island Creek oysters be without Island Creek oysters? What would the farm be without, we wouldn't, not being able to get seed? So having that assurance that you're going to get seed every year is really important to us.
I know that I've heard that from a lot of farmers too. So that's really exciting. I love to have some sea urchins and bay scallops. That's really something that I missed from other countries, from the diversity of other species that we can grow. So what do you think are the biggest opportunities in seafood in Rhode Island? I know that you've been, in the seafood industry for a long time, and I think what are the biggest opportunities that you see for growth, for the food vision, maybe, to inform the food vision?
I mean, especially as it pertains to this discussion, I think, we talk about it often, but these species that are abundant but don't have a market, and that is, I think, where the biggest untapped potential is. And we talk about it all the time, whether it's butterfish or scup or dogfish. That needs a better name, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And as well as really new species is something else that really couples with that. Bay scallops are always come to mind when I think of potential in Rhode Island. We have very limited, usually, bay scallops in the wild here, and we have just really good water to produce them, so good conditions to produce them, but they're not being produced because they're difficult to grow, but also we can't get seed. So that is another big opportunity.
So what do you think are some of the challenges that research and development and the community can help with?
Well, I think one of the biggest constraints the industry has experienced, I guess, support of local farmers, and I think that is something that I think anybody would get behind. However, the reality of the growth of the industry over the last 20 years has been great up until around 4 or 5 years ago, where I think there has been a lot of resistance to the growth of the industry because of there's NIMBY issues, and that is probably the biggest hurdle we have. We have just read this morning that there's a potential legislation that would not allow any shellfish farms within 1,000 feet of a coast in Rhode Island, which would really eliminate any aquaculture being allowed to happen in our coastal ponds and much of the bay. So, whereas the farms are a huge, ask, we're using the public trust, it is improving, water quality and habitat, biodiversity, and so there's a balance, but there, we have to, I think that's probably the biggest restriction to the growth of the industry.
So how can the university help in some of these issues, the social issues, but also maybe some biological issues?
Well, as you know, when we have a problem on a farm, whether it's whether there's a mortality issue or a growth issue, being able to bring our product, or sample and have the university take a look at them and say, maybe it's a stocking density issue, or maybe there's a certain type of algae that's being taken in by the shellfish that's restricting the growth, or maybe you might want to try a different brood stock, seed stock, parent stock oysters. So that is something that over the years we've always been fortunate, and other farmers in Rhode Island have been fortunate to be able to, lean on URI to get answers to those questions.
So one of the things that I think has been really, to mention some of the things that Sophie was talking about, is the collective, the power of the collective. And one of the things that I found very supporting, very powerful from the shellfish industry is that it's an industry that serves small farms, mom and pop farms, family-owned farms. But the industry as a whole has formed a collective, the East Coast Shellfish Growers Association in the East Coast, and that has really provided them with more power to help the industry as a whole provide seafood. Could you talk a little bit more about the East Coast Shellfish Growers Association and how that collective has helped you and other farmers?
Yeah, well, it's, having that, sounding board of other people that are in the same position, on their farms, or, hundreds of farmers on the East Coast being able to reach out to them and saying, hey, I have, this issue, does anybody know how to deal with it? And you get this, great, number of responses that people will have, some of them from academia, some of them on the farm, and they're all very useful. So this is, something that I think was modeled off the Pacific Coast Shellfish Growers Association that Dr. Bob Rowe started, I guess that was probably maybe 15 or so years ago, I'm guessing. But it's definitely been a really, helpful resource for me and other farmers to connect with each other, because, we go through our days and not, run into another person that has, shellfish farming, on their mind and at their work. But then you step into a room or a meeting, or or can reach these people on a thread that have similar problems and thought processes. It's important.
Great. I'm going to check if there's any questions for the public, just in case, to start the conversation. We'll keep talking. I mean, Perry and I can keep talking for a long time, but we also want to make sure that you're included in the conversation. So, please type your questions. So let's see.
How did you get into where you are today?
Oh, well, the love of food first, and seafood. I grew up in Galicia, like you mentioned before. It's the northwest region in Spain, right above Portugal, and it's an area very reliant on small farming and fishing as the livelihood of people. The women farm the land, and the men go fishing. And in the 70s, when I was a kid, the Magnuson-Stevens Act kind of closed some of those waters where the Galician fishermen used to fish, like George's Bank in Canada or in Africa. And that led to a really big unrest socially in my town, riots and people losing their jobs. And I don't know, I decided that aquaculture, we needed another way to produce seafood, because I wanted to keep eating seafood, that's for sure. So that's how I got into aquaculture. And then I went to school, then, did my PhD in biomedicine, nothing related to seafood. And then I decided that I didn't want to work on rats and mice anymore. I wanted to be able to eat what I do research on. And I actually went to Stanford University for a postdoc in marine biotechnology and working on diseases too. And then this job at URI came up, and I applied and I got it, and I've been in Rhode Island ever since. I love it. It reminds me actually of Galicia. We are in the same parallel. We have also the Portuguese that emigrated and came here, and they're from the fishing industry. So there's a lot of parallels between Galicia and Rhode Island.
So I get this question a lot at the restaurant. What is the is farm-raised fish bad for the environment, or is it something that you would defend when you're? I always like to defend because we need to grow our fish, and we're coming up with better feeds. However, what is your response to that? I mean, we all talk about shellfish aquaculture is good for the environment, and we can talk about that all day, filtration, increasing oxygen.
Yeah.
But when it comes to finfish, it's not as easy for me to answer. So how do you answer that?
So I think it's we do need aquaculture if we want to eat seafood, because the fishing, we can't rely on harvesting the wild. That's terrible for our ecosystems. It's not sustainable. So we do require farming, and farming can be done well and it can be done really badly. And it's all up to us to figure out the way to farm in a way that is sustainable, environmentally conscious, and provide food that is accessible and a good price. So there's definitely ways, as you start growing new species, there's always a learning curve of things that are good and bad, and you learn through the way, and that's where that's what we want to do for research, is try to improve all those methods to make sure. But like you said, shellfish is a great option. We don't have to feed them. They clean the waters that with the nitrogen, we have those algal blooms that are not necessarily good for the environment, and shellfish farming helps us provide those benefits. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
So decades ago, I remember throwing the butterfish into the fluke tanks in GSO, but what projects are going on with finfish or shellfish now at URI that you want to talk about?
Yeah, there's some great projects. Terry Bradley's trying to close the production cycle of tunas, so we don't have to rely on tuna fishery to provide, tuna is a really popular seafood. So, but I also see that we have questions in here. And so Deborah asks, what is the proposed legislation that would limit shellfish farming?
It is, as I heard in last few weeks, and I read this morning, that they would, the legislation would not allow farms to exist within 1,000 feet of the coastline in Rhode Island. So if you go 1,000 feet from the coastline in where I am, Potter Pond, that would leave almost no area in the pond, as many areas it's not even 1,000 feet across. So it is, it would really, really very much limit, if not completely halt, the growth of the industry here.
Yeah. So we have other questions. Julie asks, Perry, what are the biggest challenges to grow in the aquaculture industry in Rhode Island?
I think it's definitely the acceptance of our industry right now. People are, they like the idea of it, I think, and it's supported, but a lot of times people don't want to see it happening, in the water body that, people really feel ownership of these ponds, and they should. All Rhode Islanders own these saltwater ponds and bays, but that is, it's definitely the biggest challenge right now, is getting acceptance and actually fighting off, legislation that would really limit the growth of the industry, like the previous comment there.
So, and that's one area that URI and other, institutions in Rhode Island have been trying to address by having working groups. The waters of Rhode Island is a common, it's a common good for all of us, and there's many different users, and just managing how those different users use the bay and allowing for all those different, fair access to all those different industries, not just marinas or the view or kayakers, but also farmers.
Starting out 20 years ago when I started the farm, fishing, it was, I think there was really negotiations with wild capture fishermen, especially shell fishermen, about where these farms would go. And there was, a lot of questions from shell fishermen's associations, and we worked together to figure those things out. And the industry grew as a result of it, and I think we worked well with the commercial shell fishermen. Now we have to start doing that with homeowners on these water bodies. Yeah, and the aquaculture coordinator, there's a process now for leases, and there's a process of public. The public can comment on the leases before they are approved. We have a great process. We do have a good process, but sometimes it can take a while.
Yeah, and actually I work with many, I work in different, in the Northeastern Regional Aquaculture Center Technical Advisory Committee, and our process of aquaculture permitting is really one of the top, it's really, a model, right? It's a model for the rest of the country, or the rest of the East Coast. Let's see, Perry. Would you agree that it would be beneficial to all Rhode Island commercial fishermen to work together to promote wild harvest seafood and farm-raised seafood collectively? Fred, that's a great question.
So Absolutely, and I think that the Rhode Island Seafood Marketing Collaborative, which me and Fred are both on, I think we do a good job of that, and it just, as I'm reading the question, it comes to mind that fishermen aren't marketing people, and neither are farmers, and so and we've gotten, and some of them are better than others, but having help from Rhode Island DEM and having funds for them to be able to hire outside agencies to help us promote has really been beneficial. Really starting out, the Ocean State Aquaculture Association, early on in my career, we were able to get help to go to the Boston Seafood Festival, and really only had to go to that one time, or Boston Seafood Show rather, and really had to go to that one time to get enough customers for me and any other farmer that was around for the next 5 years, because there's such a demand for the product, and I think there's a lot of synergies between the commercial fishermen, and a lot of the farmers started as commercial fishermen or still are. So I think there's a lot of benefits to that.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, and Fred knows this well. I mean, the oyster industry has grown because there actually was a need for production of oysters through aquaculture, since the wild populations of oysters really in Rhode Island are, were almost non-existent, or had really been really affected by diseases and water quality. So the aquaculture kind of took the slack of, there was a vacuum there for production of one species in aquaculture. So aquaculture can complement what fisheries, maybe, there's species that you buy, they're sustainably harvested, come from, increases the options. So there is no farming of maybe summer flounder right now, because there's still a fishery for summer flounders. So
that's what people always ask me if I grow quahogs, and I'm like, well, I do, but I really don't invest a lot of time in them, because we can get them from the wild. And if we can get them from the wild, and it just it makes but you very rarely see a wild oyster, especially in open waters. So.
And one thing that collectively the two industries are affected are by climate change and environmental quality, and preserving the waters and the access to the waters. So that's another issue that people can, the two can work together. Let's see, do we have any more questions? No more questions? Barry, you have questions.
Let me see. I don't have any questions.
That sounds good. That's good. So let's see. I think the biggest barriers to growing. I think we went through that one again before. I know we want to make sure that we answer all the questions. So Perry, what are you most excited about in the next year? So what do you think are some initiatives that will be fun?
So the shellfish hatchery is really, really exciting for me. It's something that I've been working towards for several years, and now once linking up with you and the other folks at URI to get the project really moving, it is really exciting to have a shellfish laboratory right across the street from where I spend most of my time, which is the restaurant now, and adjacent to the oyster farm, where there's a lot of activity as well. So I am excited about that. Going to also be opening a retail location in Wakefield, where it'll be, I describe it as a seafood-centric eataly. It'll be certainly a seafood market, but hopefully preparing some other foods that we'll use in the restaurant, like breads and pastas, seafood dumplings, which is something that we recently put on the menu. And was excited and nervous about the new ventures, but that's pretty normal for me.
So one thing we are really excited about the shellfish hatchery is the possibility of all those research projects that we can do, and some of them that we are looking forward to working with you in the hatchery is, I know the USDA Agricultural Research Services, which Senator Reed has been instrumental in supporting and getting the funding for. It's a bunch of really bright scientists that are trying to breed better oysters.
Yeah, well, this will help the industry out a lot, and I'm
Yeah.
really excited to have them, working in that building. They're in the pilot scale building now that we started a few years ago, but they'll hopefully move into the full scale building when it's built, and to be able to have the best seed, the seeds coming from the best brood stock is really going to help growers with growth and mortality issues that every farmer experiences. So having farmer oysters that are bred specifically for our area, or the seed coming from brood
adapted
stock,
to our conditions.
it will be very important, because sometimes we're getting from the north or the south, but we're not able to get them from here in Rhode Island, and I think that will give us the best, other farmers as well, the best chance for success on the farms.
Thank you. I know, I'm really excited. And one thing I'm learning is that oysters are fascinating. Everyone, they seem like nothing, and they have an amazing ability to adapt to, they are really interesting. They have such diversity of each oyster. You think each oyster is the same, and they are so different. And oysters from Narrow River and from, are different from the ones from the coastal ponds.
Yeah, very.
So we are kind of embracing their diversity and trying to to not exploit it, but learn from it to make sure that we have, that we maintain and restore the environment. Because I know that one of the things that, do we have time or no, we should wrap up. So I think that we could talk forever, and maybe we'll continue our conversation in here, but it's been great to have you, Perry. Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for the great questions from the industry, and looking forward to the rest of the summit.
Thank you, Perry and Marta, and I look forward to seeing both of you at the opening of that wonderful sounding hatchery and at the restaurant, Perry, one day soon, hopefully. Thanks for being here and participating, and for your amazing partnership. As a reminder to everyone, the questions that come to the speakers today will be able to be accessed on the Business Engagement Center website after this summit, in case there are questions that we couldn't answer. So please feel free to keep the questions coming. And don't forget to post at the hashtag Rhode Island Food Summit 23 website, or Twitter or social media feed, so that we can continue to celebrate this amazing summit. We're going to take a short 5-minute break, but don't run too far. Get from your screen, because we're going to show the CBS The Dish that actually featured Perry Rasso and the Matunic Oyster Farm. And it's a great video that if you don't leave this video hungry, I don't know what will make you hungry. Anyway, here it is.
Magwai, you ready?
He's ready.
Magwai has to approve all oyster.
That's right. He's the head of operations over here.
On a sun-soaked New England day, Perry Rasso took us to Potter Pond, just off but sheltered from the heaviest waves of the Atlantic. The ideal spot to harvest a food that is changing everything here: oysters.
All right. Right off the deck of the boat. That's gives it an extra flavor.
Probably not the cleanest thing in the world, right?
Not bad.
Add that to the list.
Rasso started fishing as a boy and digging little neck clams when he was 12. He graduated from the University of Rhode Island after studying aquaculture, then started a small oyster farm in 2002.
So we got to leave him space to grow.
Nice.
You got little shrimps jumping around in there.
Today, Rasso operates 7 acres of water farming with more than 16 million oysters, plus bay scallops.
Really interesting animals. They have eyes. They have 32 sets of eyes on the top and 32 sets on the bottom. And you can see them, they're like little blue specks.
Rasso has also built a huge nearby vegetable farm.
So we have beets, salad greens, a couple varieties of kale. Over here we got our peppers and our tomatoes started, and salad greens over here, as well as the asparagus.
All of which supply his restaurant, which has become a smash hit for diners across the East Coast: Matunic Oyster Bar.
You're not a chef.
No.
You've never been a foodie?
I've become a foodie. How was the raw bar feast over here?
By now, though, Rosso has taken his broader message global, delivering TED Talks about the importance and sustainability of aquaculture to feed a crowded and hungrier planet.
Shellfish farming is the epitome of sustainable agriculture. Aquaculture sounds like agriculture. Aquaculture is agriculture. And
We're sitting here. You can sit here and look at where your food comes from. Line of sight.
Right. It's important. I mean, we have, the vegetable farm and the oyster farms all within a mile of here. To be able to see, where your food is coming from, see the farmers coming in with the oysters, putting them right in the fridge and serving them right here. It's a unique thing, and I think, oyster farm geek thought is, this incoming tide is delivering food to my babies out there. One of the great things about oyster farming is we don't have to feed the oysters. They eat the naturally occurring phytoplankton in the water. So this is delivering food to the animals. And
it's lunch for them right now.
It's lunch for them, and it's cleaning the water, so it's beneficial.
There are a lot of people who come in who just won't eat oysters.
Right.
Do you make it your mission to try to convert them?
Well, I do try to get them into oysters, and our oysters, the Matunic oysters, they're petite oysters, so they're not big, so they're a little bit more palatable for someone who might be a little wary of eating oysters.
It's almost like a gateway oyster.
The gateway oyster is what I like to call it. That's right.
Rosso has built his menu slow and steady, the breadth of which we were able to sample, starting, of course, with oysters.
So these are the Matunics right here. Those are the ones we farm raise out in Potter Pond.
I'm digging in.
Yeah, try one of those.
Great.
What do you think? Good.
Sweet?
Yeah, they're crisp, they're sweet.
It is crisp.
Yep.
To accompany Rosso's bestseller, we also had a Matunic special, passion fruit oysters, with salmon eggs and cucumbers soaked in sake. If you prefer your oysters cooked, there were the bourbon oysters. Also an asparagus and tomato salad with vegetables from his farm and a local seafood salad. Calamari, oyster stew with a rosemary cream broth, and this quinoa crab dish that blew our minds.
Look at this sucker. So you've got quinoa, avocado, crab, a drizzle over the top is...
We have lemon zest aioli there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Nice.
So good.
Not to be overlooked, the tuna with Creole mustard and mashed potatoes, and a ridiculous lobster pizza he recently debuted.
It's a pizza we put on the menu during COVID. I was researching what's the most popular takeout food, pizza. And so I said I wanted to make the best seafood pizza in the world. And I think we might have come close to it. We got some prosciutto, some truffle, some arugula on there. It's really delicious.
It should be illegal.
This is crazy.
How good.
It really is.
That pizza is. Absurd.
For dessert, there was a blueberry crumble and a Matunic signature, key lime pops. The full scale of Rosso's creation here is amazing, even though he still feels like the little kid scrapping for clams just to make a few bucks.
You talk about this a lot, about your fear of failure, of not succeeding. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're never satisfied.
I don't, like to think of myself as someone who's never satisfied, but the reality might be that, yeah.
And in the end, people get a healthier ocean because of it, and good food.
Yeah, there's definitely...
So we should enjoy your pain.
We can enjoy it because Jeff made sure, as did Marcy Waldman, that we had this and sent straight.
We've got the lobster, the oysters, the gateway oysters, as they were described.
I love that.
Some of this key lime pop and a
beverage,
lemonade.
of course.
Wonderful.
Cheers! Oh, cheers! Cheers to that and to
clink, 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 clink.
Yeah,
Clink, clink,
exactly.
clink, clink.
I just love.
Welcome back, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the video of Perry Rasso, and a huge thanks to all of our partners for providing the videos that we're showing today. Because there's so much information that you're getting today, we just want to make sure we let everybody know that we're hosting several breakout sessions after the Food Summit. They'll be held in person between February and May, and that will help us dive deeper into some important issues for our food system. These presentations today will help sort of jumpstart the conversation, but we are going to do a deeper dive going forward. So in that light, we've got some short presentations for some of the breakouts that are about to be happening. And our first presentation is from another proud URI grad, Ken Ayers. Ken is the Chief of Division of Agriculture and Forest Environment at the Department of Environmental Management. We're going to hear from Ken about the breakout session called Preserving and Growing Agriculture and Seafood Industries. Welcome, Ken.
So thanks, Catherine, and it's always a pleasure to participate each year in the session, which we've been doing for many years. And as Catherine mentioned, this is a chance to get a little bit more into the weeds about what it takes to really achieve those goals that we share for a local food system, sustainable, local, and that supports and lifts up values diversity and supports our local farmers and fishers. The session that I will lead with Julie Stelmazik, supporting our farmers and fishers, just as a heads up, probably will be combined and be back-to-back with the Farm to School session that Jessica Petrolio is going to lead from Department of Education, most likely in March. So there'll be a chance to participate both those same day back-to-back sessions, and we'll provide further information on that. Really, what we're trying to achieve here is look at these goals that we have from the perspective of a farmer or fisher. The world that they operate is often very different than the one that we do as supporters or eaters. Their future viability is often very dependent upon very practical things: the cost of fertilizer, the cost of fuel, neighbor complaints about what they're doing, the day they're eating their crops, access to markets, and whatnot. So we want to hear from them. It's particularly important that they're there, and we'll make sure that we're inclusive, as we always are with farmers and fishers, as we develop and support these goals. And we build the support system around those goals. And acknowledge the fact that we have to keep that population base strong, viable, and part of our future. It's a very small group of people when you think about it, both nationally and in Rhode Island. Probably talking about 5,000 to 6,000 people total that are our primary producers in this state. And they have their set of challenges, but without them, we can't achieve the goals that we're trying to in terms of a strong food system going forward. Our goal is not one that is siloed or only Rhode Island. Going forward, we have to recognize that our food system forever will be connected, both nationally and internationally, but the goals that we have of a 30 by 30 or 50 by 50 objectives, 30% of our food coming locally by the year 2030 or 50% by the year 2050 are entirely dependent upon maintaining and supporting and valuing the people that produce our food, the farmers and fishers in the state. There's been a set of challenges. There's always a set of challenges, but they've been really ramped up over the past 3 to 4 years. The pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the drought we had in Rhode Island and regionally last year, and climate change all produce a set of circumstances that in some cases farmers and fishers haven't faced before. And as we develop a support system, we have to recognize and understand those challenges and work the support system so it enables farmers and fishers to be viable. The larger food system, as we've talked about, most of our food's coming to Rhode Island from out of the state. The average food miles in the country is around 1,500 miles. Some of those factors that I've talked about before we can control, many we can't. And as one who has supported the system and the farmers and fishers of the state over the past 3 to 4 years, I know that when things get tough, the public of the state clamors for local food. And we've seen the response to such challenges as the pandemic a couple years ago, which is still ongoing, but when it was at its very peak, was people seeking out local food. And supply chain challenges and price challenges this year, more and more are resulting in people wanting access to local food. So from the perspective of a farmer or fisher, how do we keep them strong, viable, and part of our future? How do we promote land access? How do we promote buffering them from some of the challenges of living in a very urban state? How do we ease their way through permitting or zoning or other challenges, including access to land or getting a farm loan or being able to buy a boat? Those are the type of things that we want to explore. I think in Rhode Island, we're very, very fortunate in the type of relationship that we have with our farmers and fishers. We value them in state government. We do our best to support them. We're fortunate with all the money that's flowing into Rhode Island from the federal government and state government in terms of the ability to make change. I've been at this job for 35 years and I've never seen the opportunity that we have, like right now, to use federal money to impact the system, and we are hard at that. And I think over the past year or two, as Julie had mentioned, we're making changes that, or have the potential that we've never seen before. So we want to do this right. We want to do this in such a way that we're not creating gaps in the system going forward. And I think as these programs take hold and mature, we'll see less and less of those gaps. But it's particularly important that we explore that, understand that, and are sensitive to that, and recognize that all that we've talked about is very much dependent on this rather small group of people who produce the food for us. And understanding the lives that they live and the challenges that they have and the value that they have for Rhode Island is critically important. I'm bullish about this. I think there's great potential, and I think we will achieve that. But that's one of the things that we have to explore and understand and do our best to make sure that we adapt what we do to their needs. So we're looking forward to this session and looking forward to your participation. And there's no time, time doesn't permit us to get into the weeds of that right now, but promise that it'll be interesting and productive, and we can't wait for you to join us in talking about it in a couple months. So thank you.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you for being such an amazing partner in your role at DEM. We really, really appreciate it. The next presenters, and which will be our next breakout session this spring, are Matthew Britt, an assistant professor at Johnson & Wales University, and Lauren Abda, founder and CEO of Branch Food. They're going to talk about cultivating food innovation and entrepreneurship, a very important aspect of the food system because we want to do as much new business creation as we can. Welcome, Matthew and Lauren.
Hello. So Lauren, you want to start off with some introductions?
Absolutely. Well, I'm so thrilled to be here today. Thank you so much to Catherine and Sharon and Katie for all of your work pulling this fabulous event together. It's a wonderful way to kick off the new year talking about food and all that we're doing to be able to support innovation and entrepreneurship in Rhode Island and beyond. So a bit about Branch Food. I'm the founder of Branch Food. We are a launch pad for food innovation, and we work to really bring together all corners of the industry through shared events, advisory support, investments, and workspaces to support ideas that are transforming the food industry. Since 2015, we've built a community of over 18,000 innovators globally and worked with over 800 high-growth food and agri-food tech startups, both nationally as well as around the world. We also run an investment network, Branch Venture Group, that funds emerging food-related startups and currently have 15 portfolio company investments that are building new products, technology, and services to transform the future of food and really bring forth a better, more sustainable food system. We have offices in Boston, where we were founded, and now Providence, where we launched late last year, thanks to the wonderful collaboration and support from Rhode Island Commerce. And we're excited, very excited to be expanding our work and building on our work this year in the Ocean State. Over the last year, since we received the grant from Commerce, we've really focused on trying to understand what some of the greatest needs are for food businesses in the Rhode Island state. And we did learning tours, we did roundtables, we've joined multiple Rhode Island food-related conferences, trade missions, events, toured manufacturing sites, participated in, obviously networking events. And it's been, I think, an incredibly enlightening experience to really see all of the incredible work that's being done in the state as it relates to food and new food creation, scaling food businesses, and all of the wonderful organizations, public, private, that are working at the forefront of bolstering this part of the economy within the state. And through that research, we really found three things. One, growth strategy support is something that companies big and small are looking for. And those are really, the growth strategy support is really, how to manage cash flows, how to negotiate with large distributors, how to scale up, my product recipe, or, I finally have a great sense of who my target customer is. How do I refine the marketing, the branding, to really be able to resonate with that end consumer? The second thing we found was really the need for co-manufacturing. So many products have unique attributes that are ultimately the differentiator in that product category. And this requires specialized manufacturing. And so, where can we get the resources and be able to focus on producing our products within the state to maintain our business in the state and grow our work in the state, but that, allow us to produce these products that are specific and unique ways. And then lastly, one of the findings from our research was really funding and financing strategy support. What are those different types of funding available for different stages of my business? And how do I ensure I'm making the right financial decisions and investments in my own company? And so the work of Branch Food, launched last September, is very programmatic oriented. We will be, over the course of this year, going forward, rolling out a variety of resources, clearinghouse for food resources, inclusive of mentorship, a knowledge portal, online knowledge and educational sessions to be able to support food entrepreneurs as they really scale up their food businesses and look for that, those critical pieces of information to be able to inform those important decisions as they make along the way. We will be hosting industry-specific in-person and virtual events through Community Table, which is a signature event of ours. We've been hosting it for years. It's now largely virtual, but we will be doing in-person Rhode Island events to really connect the community and help identify those people within Rhode Island that can help other businesses kind of grow and meet the milestones that they seek to achieve. We'll also be doing and continue to hope to do industry-wide engagement, really connecting state resources and regional food corporations with the emerging innovation and entrepreneurship community to, again, help share resources and facilitate growth. And lastly, community activation. It's one of the things that we do a lot of here in the greater Boston area, but providing something as simple as introductions to the right people at the right time for businesses as they really seek to achieve their goals, and in most cases put the money to work that they've raised to continue growing their businesses. So we look forward to doing all of that, and you can learn more about our work at branchfood.com and branchventuregroup.com, or branchfood.com, which is our community-focused work, and branchventuregroup.com, which is our investment-related work. Our activities are local as well as global, and so we look forward to supporting the people building these businesses that are shaping the future of food. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Lauren, and that's inspiring. And I'm so excited to be partnering with Branch Food on our session, which is going to be held on Tuesday, April 11th from 9 to 10:15 in the morning at the Johnson & Wales Harborside campus right here in Rhode Island. So my name is Matt Britt. I'm an assistant professor at JWU, and I'm directly connected to our sort of food innovation and entrepreneurship angle that the university has leaned heavily into. Our session that we're going to do on the 11th is going to really leverage industry experts to engage them in an interactive discussion to discuss things across the food system on how emerging businesses can access and leverage resources within their local ecosystem. So everything Lauren just talked about, we're going to really lean into that. We're going to have experiences and conversations to help emerging entrepreneurs really take those first or second steps with minimal risk, which was really inspiring. At JWU, our food innovation world kind of lives within our Center for Entrepreneurship, along with the College of Food Innovation and Technology, which I'm a member of, faculty member of. We provide one-on-one counseling, almost at a pre-stage 1 incubator process. So if Lauren's at stage 2, we're engaging students before they even enter the industry to allow them the opportunity to explore these sort of avenues at minimal risk, really encouraging them to then pursue an opportunity in entrepreneurship or food innovation, understanding more of how the environment works. We provide students with unique opportunities to promote and engage in their own innovation projects. We create contests that are sponsored and really lean on industry experts. We have several food innovation entrepreneurs in residence that share curriculum time with us, and they allow students the opportunity to create their own projects and to pitch them to industry experts for the chance to win cash prizes or to get notoriety or even networking opportunities. We have amazing internship opportunities where students can participate in real world entrepreneurship entities to gain experience, better preparing them for the future. And then we also have so many other programs that are leaning heavily on this idea of innovation and entrepreneurship that maybe don't directly connect to food, but have their ways of sort of preparing students to embrace food, as JWU usually does. One example of that would be our cannabis entrepreneurship. We are really training students to go out and to capitalize and explore and succeed within this emerging and, dare I say, budding industry, and how that can connect to food. So we're really excited to partner with Branch Food and be fortunate to participate in the URI Summit and to provide these opportunities on the 11th of April.
Thank you again to both Matthew and Lauren for joining us from Johnson & Wales and from Branch Venture Group. We really appreciate it. So as we were discussing, you can look at our Business Engagement Center YouTube and Twitter pages if you're interested, and can post there any questions that you have for any of our speakers. And also please use the hashtag Rhode Island Food Summit 23 when posting to social media. Our next speaker and the next breakout session that we're going to have is with Jessica Petrolia. She is the chair of Rhode Island Farm to School Network and the coordinator of a child nutrition program, the Child Nutrition Program at Rhode Island Department of Education. You can't teach our kids young enough about the opportunity to work within the food system. We will hear from Jessica about growing the farm to school movement in Rhode Island. Welcome, Jessica.
Thanks, Catherine. Good morning, everyone. So again, my name is Jessica Petrolia. I'm the coordinator of the federally funded child nutrition programs that are administered out of the Rhode Island Department of Education, and also the chair of Rhode Island's Farm to School Network. And I'm here today to give you an overview of our upcoming Food System Summit follow-on session, which will focus on providing local food for local kids and understanding the farm to school market. As Ken mentioned earlier, we anticipate holding this session in partnership with the session hosted by Ken and Julie in March at Farm Fresh Rhode Island, but stay tuned, more details are to come on that. Over the past few years, the United States Department of Agriculture has affirmed its commitment to building a more resilient food system rooted in local and regional food production through its food system transformation framework. If you've been listening in all morning, you heard both Senator Reed and our Director of Food Strategy, Julie Stelmazik, talk about how federal and local priorities are already transforming the local food system, but you also know that there's still work to be done. The goal of the Federal Food System Transformation Framework include building a more resilient food supply chain that provides more and better market opportunities for consumers and producers while reducing carbon pollution, creating a fairer food system that combats market dominance and helps producers and consumers gain more power in the marketplace by creating new, more, and better local market options, making nutritious food more accessible and affordable for consumers, and emphasizing equity. The federally funded child nutrition programs, which include the National School Lunch and School Breakfast programs, are an important component of this work as they represent a crucial nutrition access point for families, serving an average of over 66,000 students per day across our state. Incorporating farm to school initiatives into these programs is one strategy for building strong schools and just food systems. Farm to school enriches the connections that communities have with fresh, healthy food and local food producers by changing food purchasing and education practices at school. Farm to school provides students with access to healthy local foods as well as educational opportunities such as school gardens, cooking lessons, and farm field trips. And Farm to School strengthens local food systems and supports vibrant communities by building relationships between large purchasers like schools and agricultural producers. Procurement of local foods not only provides students access to healthier school meals, but it can advance income generation and access to land ownership for marginalized food producers. In Rhode Island, all public schools are required to offer meals under the National School Lunch and School Breakfast programs, and an increasing number of schools are sourcing locally grown foods for their school meals and snacks. Pre-pandemic, these federally funded school nutrition programs brought in just about $62 million in revenue, $42 million of which represents federal funding coming into the state. Not accounting for the recent rise in inflation, most school nutrition budgets allow for food costs that represents about 30% of overall revenue, which means that of the $62 million in revenue, up to $18.6 million is spent directly on food. If you're a producer or a food manufacturer, large or small, this means that there are market opportunities in your own backyard and a chance for your bounty to nourish children in your community. Strengthening relationships between local producers and schools is a long-term strategy to ensure our children always have access to nutritious foods in school, a win-win for both child health and local agriculture. Our upcoming follow-on session, which will be hosted by the Rhode Island Farm to School Network and facilitated by our farmer and producer community of practice, will be geared specifically towards farmers, fishers, and local food makers looking to learn about how they can play a role in supplying local products to schools and the opportunities for educating students about local food and agriculture in schools. You'll be able to hear from a panel of your peers and share your experiences, good or bad, as they relate to farm to school. This session will also provide an opportunity for networking and resource sharing, and the information gathered during the session will be used to inform the priorities and strategic planning of the Rhode Island Farm to School Network. We hope to see you there, and for anyone who hasn't already, please visit us at rhodeislandfarmtoschool.org to sign up for the network and stay informed about our work and our upcoming events. We do have a few minutes left now, so I'd be happy to answer any questions from the audience if there are any at this time. Okay, so the first question, do all school districts in Rhode Island have a farm to school program? I think one important thing to think about for farm to school is that there are three pillars that we focus on. There's procurement, education, and gardens. So not all school districts would likely respond to say that they have a farm to school program, but almost universally schools are doing one of those three things. They're either in some way incorporating local ag education into their curriculum through lesson planning or site visits. They may be having an edible school garden that they tend with their students and incorporate into lesson planning. And most, if not all, are also participating in the purchasing of local foods that get served in the cafeterias. So it's hard to quantify. We do have a farm to school census. It doesn't represent responses from 100% of the state, so I can't say for certain, but I would say it's more likely that schools are engaging in farm to school than that they're not. Do any schools provide agricultural job training in high school? So there's definitely opportunity for schools to be providing food system education in a variety of ways. We do have high quality curriculum standards in the state that dictate, the different subject matter that's taught, but there's opportunities for lesson planning within that. And there are some great examples within the state of incorporating like ag education into those high quality curriculum standards. And we do also have a vibrant career and tech system within the state that offers opportunity for culinary training. So I think it kind of depends on what aspect of farm to school that you're speaking about or what aspect of the agricultural system, but there's opportunity for education, I think, across curriculum and across our schools for incorporation there. and how can my child's school get involved? So there's a variety of ways. Number one would be to go back to the Rhode Island Farm to School Network.org website that I mentioned earlier and sign up for the network. There you can join an action committee, which is kind of the bodies that drive the work of the network, or a community of practice where you can just network with peers and understand more about their experiences in farm to school. It's also a great opportunity if you can get involved with your school's wellness committee. Schools in Rhode Island are required by state law to have a wellness committee where oftentimes farm to school work is driven. So that would be a great way to kind of get a beat on what they're doing and where you maybe could increase their farm to school efforts. And of course, you're always welcome to go to the Rhode Island Department of Education website. It's ride.ri.gov, and you can contact me, and I'm happy to connect you with anyone in your school or any resources for farm to school. Okay. Has there been any exploration into private and charter school involvements into farm to school initiatives? So again, many of the schools are already participating in farm to school, and they certainly have the opportunity. Out of my department, we manage those federally funded child nutrition programs, and all of the public charter schools do participate. So they certainly have the opportunity to get support from my department. And many of the private schools do as well. There are some constraints around the actual procurement of local food for those schools because of the relationship that they have with their vendor and how small they are and who they can attract. But in many cases, our charter schools are often serviced by a larger public school that's already participating in farm to school. So they're benefiting from those local purchases regardless. And those are also great places because our charter school communities are usually so vibrant and engaged, where there are usually very successful school gardens and parent engagement that can help move those activities forward. So there's already some movement there, but we always welcome more voices in the farm to school space for sure.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Such interesting information, and we look forward to your breakout session. Lastly, or the last breakout session, not quite lastly, the last breakout session will be presented by one of our very close partners, Shannon Brawley, the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Nursery and Landscape Association, better known as RINLA, and Shayna Cohen, Senior Consultant at KKP. We're going to hear from Shannon and Shayla today about growing good food jobs. Workforce development is one of the most important things we can provide in terms of this sector, and so we're excited about their partnership. Welcome, Shannon and Shayna.
Thank you, Catherine. We're really excited. My name is Shannon Brawley, Executive Director of RINLA, and I just want to say how happy we are to be here today. And I want to thank Catherine, Sharon, and Katie at URI for making all of this happen. We're thrilled again to be here. Shayna, I'll turn it over to you for a little bit.
Thank you. I'm Shayna Cohen. I'm a senior consultant with a consultancy that works nationwide with a home base here in Rhode Island and across sectors. We work in business, nonprofit, government, philanthropy, and education. And we have a specialization in food systems research, strategy, and problem solving. I've been working over the past 5 years with Shannon and the Rhode Island Nursery and Landscape Association. And we're here today to discuss the workshop that we're co-hosting as a follow-on to today's Food Summit on February 16th at 4 p.m. at the URI Alumni Center and online. Our workshop is called Good Food Jobs, Cultivating People to Elevate the Food System. It's a panel and networking opportunity. And here's what it's all about. As we've all seen over the past 3 years, the nation's cultural and economic experience of COVID, of massive supply chain disruptions, of the Great Resignation, has brought sweeping changes to the nature and experience of work in America and in the food system. And more, we're all seeing people who are leaving undersatisfying jobs behind in search of work with businesses and organizations that have a mission, vision, and values that align with their own, where they have opportunities for professional growth, where they're cultivated as full human beings, and or where the products, processes, or programs in question contribute to environmental sustainability, to vibrant local food systems, to social justice, and to equity. The Good Food Jobs workshop that we're hosting in February will bring together employers and employees from across the Rhode Island food system and across food supply chains, representing a range of business sizes, a range of organizational structures, and a range of perspectives. And together we'll explore a range of tangible and tactical approaches to investing in people as an investment in a business, and more broadly, investing in people as a way of investing in the state's agriculture and food industries. Our panelists will include from the agriculture sector, Greenview Farm, From the food service sector, the Newport Restaurant Group. From the distribution sector, Farm Fresh Rhode Island. And from the food processing sector, Blount Fine Foods. In addition to just introducing you to the idea that we're doing this panel, inviting you to it, and expressing our hope that you'll join us in February, we wanted to also take the opportunity to tell you a bit about why we're hosting this workshop and what perspective we bring to it as host and facilitator. Shannon, over to you.
All right. A little bit about the Rhode Island Nursery and Landscape Association. We advocate on behalf of the $2.5 billion green industry here in the state. And that includes a broad range of businesses centered really on working lands and land stewardship. One of the key ways the association has been serving Rhode Island farm businesses over the past 5 years is really by developing a suite of interconnected, employer-driven, people-centered workforce program called Growing Futures. We're actually really proud of these programs. And Growing Futures' mission is to attract, train, and retain the next generation of professionals who will steward, protect, and respond to the changing environment and how we feed our communities. So these programs that we've established, again, is interconnected and together comprise a career pathway from our 5-week paid pre-apprenticeship program, which was inspired by the Conservation Civilian Corps, and we're actually working on DEM public lands, our Arcadia management area. It's a rigorous hands-on work program on public land, Arcadia, and of which 70% of the graduates are matched with permanent job positions in the industry. We have a registered apprenticeship program, which is an earn while you learn model that combines mentored on-the-job learning with job-related instruction, both tied to attainment of defined skills and standards. A new pathway that we're really excited, and we partnered actually very closely with the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, URI, and CCRI to develop an interdisciplinary associate degree program called Environment, Sustainability, and Management at CCRI, with clear transferability to URI and significant programs that speak to the food system. We also have enhanced professional certifications and much more. RINLA has really taken this on because labor and human capital issues were found to be the #1 issue facing our member employees. And we also saw it as an opportunity to connect the dots between industry's search for the next generation of leaders and workers, and a generation's search for work that holds meaning and a way to contribute to larger issues facing our coastal community. We know that businesses across the food system experience the same challenges. It's across economic sectors, and we know this to be true. And so there are the same opportunities. And we really are looking forward to sharing with you different perspectives and really make this panel, provide you with some tools and useful. But I'm going to turn it back over to Shayna so she can wrap this up.
Thanks, Shannon. So that perspective of building the Growing Futures programs that Shannon described together over the past 5 years is really the underpinning of why we're doing this panel. It will underlie the questions that we ask of our cross-supply chain panelists, and it will underlie the discussion that we look forward to hosting with many of you. This workshop is designed for workers, managers, business owners, people who work at any level of any kind of food or agriculture organization, and anyone wanting a window into the specific kinds of things that real Rhode Island organizations are doing to cultivate people. We're really excited to be shining a light on all of this and leading this discussion. We hope you'll join us, and we're happy to take questions if you have any for us. So the question is, will I meet some of your interns at the breakout session? The panelist and follow-on session will bring together employers and their employees. RINLA's program is a registered apprenticeship program. It's a federally recognized post-secondary credential that is hosted and sponsored by the Nursery and Landscape Association. We will have a person who is actively involved as a registered apprentice and has been moving through the ranks of the various levels of registered apprenticeship and through the programs Shannon described as a speaker on the panel, yes. Shannon, do you want to field this one?
Sure, it really is across the board in terms of pay rate, but you will find for beginning level in the industry, it could be anywhere from 15 to 18, and depending on the industry sector, it's as high as $20 to $25 an hour. It really is, we've learned, very different across industries. But we will talk more about pay rates. What does a benefit package look like? What are we finding people looking for? So we will address this issue.
And how employers can transparently create expectations and pathways to wage growth over time.
Exactly.
Is another piece of registered apprenticeship and all the different models we'll be talking about. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Shannon and Shayna. That was great. And we look forward to your breakout session. Actually, their breakout session will be our first breakout session. It'll be in February. The full slate of breakout sessions will be posted at the end of this summit and then again on our website. To thank you again. To close out the day, I'd like to introduce Terry Gray. Terry is the director of the Department of Environmental Management. Director Gray has kindly offered to join us today and sort of unpack all the different things we learned today. Once Director Gray finishes up, we have another fabulous video to show about RINLA's work, as well as we will drill down on the various breakout sessions that we have planned. But in the meantime, welcome, Director Gray.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you to URI and all the organizers for putting together this session this morning. I'm sure that there was an unbelievable amount of information that was delivered to everyone, and I can say that confidently because I've been involved with the food and nutrition sector for just a short amount of time, about 18 months since I took over as director of DEM, and man, there's so much going on and there's so much to learn and so much passion and energy and activity that it's just amazing to see that. So one of the duties that I have is to chair something called the Interagency Food and Nutrition Policy Council, or IFNPAC. It's kind of an interesting acronym, but it's a good one. And I got recruited to do this when Dr. Alexander Scott left the health department, and I was named acting director of DEM. They kind of happened at the same time. So both Ken Ayers and Julie Stelmazik, two of our stars in the food world, tag teamed and recruited me to chair IFNPAC. And if you know those two, you know you don't say no when they ask you for something. So I've been the chair for a while now, and I've really been learning what an amazing network Rhode Island has and how much collaboration goes on. Now, IFNPAC is an organization of state agencies. And when you look at the state agencies involved, it's a pretty amazing lineup. Obviously, you have DEM, the Health Department, Commerce RI, the Department of Education, Healthy Aging, Health and Human Services, the Department of Administration, and the Department of Corrections. And I'm probably leaving out others, but it's a super powerful group of people that touch a lot of Rhode Islanders. And when they come together, they partner with these amazing organizations outside of government, like the Rhode Island Community Food Bank, the Food Policy Council, RINLA, the Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition, and many others. And that is compounded all by our academic institutions, and they really help out in supporting the whole network. And what they bring together is this power of collaboration. And that's something that's special in Rhode Island. It's a small place, it's a tight-knit community, and we can all work together. We know each other, we work together with each other, and you can really get something done, which is important. And in the food network and the nutrition world, it really is getting a lot done. You've heard about support for our farmers and fishing community. In DEM, we have Ken and his unbelievable team in our Division of Agriculture, but we also have teams in marine fisheries, teams that run the Port of Galilee, teams that run our shell fishing program, and all of those are important contributors to our food network here in Rhode Island. You talked about just the idea of delivering healthy food to our residents. It's not just delivery and access, but it's also affordability. And for anybody that's entered a grocery store in the past year, affordability is an issue. And the idea of just making sure people have access to great locally grown or locally caught food and their ability to pay for that food and bring it home to their families is amazing. When we're looking at this, we're servicing kids, we're servicing seniors, we're servicing families. That's the lifeblood of our state. And getting them the food and nutrition that they need, and just learning about what Rhode Island has to offer is really kind of a core mission for us. So I want to thank everybody for attending today. Thank you for all your support for making this amazing network happen. And I guess we'll close it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Really appreciate your participation and your partnership with the university and just across the state in this sector. Well, we have one more video to share with you about the amazing work that RINLA is doing in workforce development. And so take a look at this.
What does the world you want to live in look like? Now, maybe more than ever, in this new world where we are seeking space and fresh air and fresh perspectives, that is a question on more minds than ever. What does the world you want to live in look like? And while you're here, suddenly considering your place in this world and your role in the future, and we're asking ourselves the big, important questions. Here's another one. Where do you want future generations to live? What future do you want to create? Because the decisions we make today will transform the future. But it's hard to really care about the future, especially when it seems so far away. We talk about icebergs and polar bears, honeybees and hurricanes, carbon emissions and wildfires. But what can we do about it? How do we become part of the solution? Where do we even begin? This is Rhode Island. This is our home. The sandy beaches that give way to marshy estuaries. The rivers, streams, and tributaries that lead inland, past farms, through towns and into cities. And conversely, the streams and rivers and waterways that lead to the ocean. The ebb and flow of life-giving water and fertile soil in between parking lots, neighborhoods, past beautiful coastal homes. Everything, all connected. This ecosystem is the slow and patiently powerful work of eons of geological processes coming together to give us this: abundance, beauty, and an overwhelming responsibility to take care of it. To understand the history of this place, and to not just improve, but to unearth this potential that surrounds us. To give more than we take. To innovate. To protect. To restore. And to learn from the generations that came before us. To stay in Rhode Island. To be a guardian for this small but wonderful place. To create better policies for better land use with better outcomes. Better ways to adapt and overcome our shared challenges, seen and unseen. Through fluctuations of the seasons and over generations, to work hard towards a better future. One shovel, one tree, one plant, one seed at a time. Yes, the future can seem far away, but if you really think about it, the future is now. And now, and now, and now, and now, for forever and ever. And if we choose to be a part of the solution today, we can grow and grow and grow. Patiently, urgently, thoughtfully, to actually create the kind of world that we want to call home.
I just love that video with all its beautiful imagery. It makes me appreciate the state that we all live in and have grown to love. Before we go, I want to remind you about the breakout sessions that we have coming up. As you've heard today, we are pleased to partner with several local organizations to offer several in-person breakout sessions around topics essential to our food system. The breakout session dates are here on the screen. February 16th, we're going to be featuring the RINLA Grow Good Food Jobs, easy for me to say, cultivating people to elevate the food system. That will be from 4 to 5:15 right here at URI, in fact, in the building that I'm sitting in right now, the Alumni Center. The next two events will be on the same day in March. We're determining the date at this point, but it will be at Farm Fresh in Providence, Rhode Island. We'll be back in touch with that date as we get closer. The dates will all, by the way, be posted on the Food Center website at URI. And that the date to be determined will feature both the Cultivate Food and Innovation, and that'll feature local food, farm to school, as well as preserving and growing agriculture. So those two breakouts will be on the same day in Providence. The last breakout session on April 11th will be accelerating food innovation and entrepreneurship, and that will be with Johnson & Wales and Branch Food, as you heard, and that will take place at the Johnson & Wales Harborside campus from 9 to 10:15. But no need to write all this down because it will all be posted on our website. And as someone who attended the Food Summit and is on our list, you will get more information as we post the dates and times on the website. We also invite you to continue to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn, as well as the Business Engagement Center and the Food Center. This recording will be posted on the website shortly. And I'd like to take a minute to thank our amazing event staff. My team, Sharon Pavignano, Katie McGuinn, Patty Gross, and Dino Audiello, as well as the amazing team from the Inner Space Center, Alex DeCiccio, Ryan Campos, Jessica Cowblain, and Patrick Flanagan. We are so grateful for them for making this event possible. Thank you, everyone, for attending the 2023 Rhode Island Food System Summit. This is just the beginning of the 2030 food strategy that Julie and the Commerce team are planning, and we'll hope you'll join us at one of the many summit events that follow. We'll see you soon. Thank you.